Welcome to the Michigan Gone Wild podcast, where we cover everything Michigan and wild, from hunting and fishing to popular and controversial topics around the state and country. Let's get to it.
This deer is one of 1,000. You do not see deer that sold very often. They don't make it this long. This is a mature deer.
I just shot the biggest buck I ever had in Michigan. King. Look at that frickin' brute. He's a brute. Yes.
Anyways, so yeah, finally getting down to sit down, talk deer hunting, a couple drinks. Yours is alcohol free, but
yeah,
it's not.
I need a little energy.
Yep.
Been up since 4.
4 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been up since 5. Went through salt and everything and did all that. Actually, no, I went in last night and I moved snowbanks. I'm thinking of the morning before, what I have to do tomorrow morning. So last night, yeah, I went in at midnight and I moved snowbanks until 6 through salt. I came home. I was home by 7. I slept till 11, got up, got some stuff done, went to the gym, and now I'm here. Pretty tired.
It's a full Thursday.
Yeah, it is. So, like we're just talking, your dad roped us into that squirrel tournament, so we're going to be doing a squirrel tournament.
Yeah, he called me and told me you signed me up.
No,
I get here and talk to you. You didn't even do anything.
I walked into the bar and he's like, "You're doing the squirrel tournament," and I'm like, "When's that?" He's like, "This Saturday." I'm like, "I thought it was like later in March." I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. He told me March, like middle of March or something. So when I called him up tonight, I was like, "Hey, you guys are posting that on Facebook and no date on it." I said, "Isn't it towards the end of the month or in the middle of the month or something?" "No, it's March 1st. I said, "This Saturday." "Yeah." I said, "Well, I don't got the little man this weekend." "Well, it's for the adults." I said, "Oh."
Like, oh, all right.
He's like, "Well, you're in it." I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Elvin signed you up already." And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess I am."
I promise you I did not sign you up.
Well, we're signed up now.
I walked in and he's like, "You're doing the squirrel tournament." I'm like, "All right, yeah, you and Charlie, you got a team." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Because it's against Two Wheel Tavern." And the only team that the Elkhorn had was your dad's. So
I don't even know who's with my dad.
I don't know either. Now you're Uncle Jim, because he would have said I don't know if he's doing something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, anyways, you guys are going to get a squirrel hunting video, so we'll see about that.
I'm not going to lie. Little man, he watches, I can't think of their name on YouTube. Anyways, they do a bunch of little squirrel hunts all the time and stuff.
Yeah.
And them things are blowing right up. I mean, 3 million views. And
good.
So maybe our squirrel hunt will get up there.
Maybe.
Past our deer hunting.
We'll see. Could you imagine that?
We might just have to do a little bit more.
Throw up a squirrel hunting video and it just blows up.
Can't think of his name either.
Well, we got some deer here on the... I don't have all of mine. Neither do you.
Mm-mm.
So you just got your Ohio buck there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you got your Ohio buck, my Ohio buck, and then you killed a buck in Michigan. I killed 2 in Michigan during rifle season. So we're going to hash through all that, kind of tell a little story about each one, and you can go first. Tell us, because you shot yours first, so I'll tell mine, and so on and so forth. So first one up is this dandy 10-point, 9-point.
Well,
Deon, Ohio.
if you count the one down here.
You could definitely count that.
Nice.
He broke it off. It was going to be definitely going to be a pearly tip on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I got velvet pictures of this buck. And back it up, we went, what was it, April? We went scouting?
Yeah, it was the beginning of April.
Yeah. So, yeah, we went into your spot, Tony's spot, and then we split up that last day because the weather finally broke for us.
Yep.
And I ended up going up in that drainage and throwing that 2 cameras up, just regular cameras, because I couldn't get no service, and ended up getting this and like 3 other big bucks on camera in velvet. And you could tell that he had one in one picture, and then the next picture during velvet, it was broke right off.
Yeah.
But This is the first buck I've killed in Ohio that I had pictures of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, normally our scouting trips are checking out new spots, new drainages and stuff, and then this year it kind of worked out because...
This is the first buck I killed in Ohio that I had a picture of.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, remember?
Yep.
I had him on camera a few times throughout Velvet.
We put cameras up the year prior.
Yes.
But they weren't working.
Well, they weren't cell cams either. Last year was the first year we put cell cams down there, which I like that. I'm still getting pictures. They got snow down there in some spots.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your cameras are still working?
Yep.
Right
Yeah,
on.
I had a couple of decent bucks make it through the season, all of them. Nothing super big. Good bucks, though. Like, they're going to be every bit of, the bucks we killed this year, last couple years.
So the reason I started back in April when we scouted was they got a washout right before we got down there. We were going to come down the one weekend. It was nothing but rain and floods. And we gave it, maybe 10 days. We ended up going down, right?
Yeah.
7 or 10 days. And it was still kind of wet, still rainy.
Very wet, yeah.
But it blew out a major beaver dam in our spot that we normally hunt. So, I mean, it was, when I scouted it, it was wet. But when we, forward up to November when we went down to hunting, it was dry.
Mm-hmm.
It was all dry up in there. The creek was real, like inches, barely flowing through.
Mm-hmm.
So putting them cameras up in April, it opened my eyes a little bit because it was wet when we went down scouting, and then dry in the summer, throughout the summer, and then into deer season. So it
was really dry when we went there for deer season. Yeah. Really dry.
So it kind of opened my eyes a little bit more for where I need to put my cameras.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that was kind of a new drainage. I never really walked in that drainage that much. And the area that we usually walk in, it's wet, but it's always wet.
Yeah.
Like it was dry down there, but it was still wet in that spot, where we normally walk. So I think that little bit of weather change and everything that happened between April and November, I put my cameras up literally in the water almost. Mm-hmm. And then come November, it was dry.
Yeah.
I had all my bucks right up until I think it was middle of September, and then that camera went dead because the pond that they were drinking out of finally dried up.
Oh.
And I was hoping to hunt that pond, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Using that water source, because last 4 years it was hot.
Yeah.
So I was kind of banking.
Very hot.
Yeah, so I was banking on hunting that pond, catching them coming down the drainage into that drinking water. So that's where I'm getting at with the cameras. I was focused on one thing, the weather and temperatures for November.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it hit November, water source just like it normally is there, but this year it got just blown out because there was nothing holding it back.
Just wasn't there.
So I need to change up my cameras and stuff in that area a little bit more. But so what I did was I just dropped back a little bit in that drainage down into a marsh where I was starting to get, because I would move up that mm-hmm. first day we were there. And I was trying to get to that pond.
Mm-hmm.
No cell camera, no service anyways. So I was trying to get up to that pond, and I could tell it was been dry for the last couple months there. As I'm walking up the creek, I keep running into sign. The sign keeps getting better and better and better. And about 500 yards from where I really wanted to go, the sign was literally the sign where you never want to pass up. You're like, I got to sit this.
Yeah.
I at least have to sit it two sits, and then I'll move up. There's no point to move forward if I'm hitting that sign already.
Right.
So if anything, I'm catching them coming from the pond or going to the pond. Mm-hmm. So either way, I'm still hunting that section that I had my cameras in. So I set up.
You got both directions of travel covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't kind of a loss, you know what I mean? I was second guessing myself, but at the same time, I just went with my gut. I was just like, there's too much good sign here, too many rubs, too many scrapes. The traffic in between the marsh, I was like, yeah, I got to stay here.
Well, also, too, I mean, that's the first sit. So it's like you have a whole week to hunt it. It's like, why not?
Right.
I mean, you
got 8 days to hunt there.
Yeah, you can easily move up, a day or two later or something like that if you're not seeing anything during daylight there, because you know that they're there. And if you're not seeing them when you're there, they're either smelling you or they're just not coming down there during daylight.
No.
So I think like you said, with the drought and everything, that kind of changed their behavior a little bit. So it was a good thing that you ended up staying down there and staying on that sign, obviously.
Yeah. But man, in my mind, when I scouted it, put cameras up, I told myself I was going to walk the drainage or walk up the creek, use the creek as much as possible. Obviously I was going to think there was going to be some deep spots where I would have to cross, but this time I got down there, the creek was low. I could literally walk the whole creek. And so I scouted up to about 500 yards from that pond area that was backed up, and it's all marshy. It opened up, and there was rubs everywhere from all different directions. You know what I mean? So, and then that was also the spot where I had a camera. It didn't go off, didn't work at all. But that's where those oaks were.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I got this sign. I can't go any further. I got to give this a sit. So I set up. I think, what was it? 1, 2 o'clock?
Yeah, it was about 2 o'clock when we finally got set up, because leaving at we leave at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
We get down there around 1, 2 o'clock. We usually stop for lunch. So that's an hour, or stop at Cabela's or something like that. But I think it was about 2 o'clock when we finally got there, and then we were walking in.
And then I think we had an off wind too that day.
It was a really weird wind.
What was it? Was it more? It was more.
I want to say southeast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was an east or a southeast, because and not to jump too far ahead, but I know that because the tree that I killed my buck out of last year, if I would have been sitting there, I would have got winded, and that evening. So I ended up sitting about 60, 70 yards on the other side of that trail that comes up out of that drainage. And that's where I had that doe come up on the first night. So, and then obviously the next morning, everything that preceded the following day was like, same thing. Like, I can't go any further than this. I have to stop and try this. I wanted to be there in that tree, but with the way the wind was, it was like, well, anything that comes up out of that drainage to go up into this drain, the ridge, they're going to get my scent, whether it's I'm sitting there right now because it was a southeast wind, but the thermals in that drainage particularly pull down, towards the pond in the evening. And it's also like that in the morning, too, which is why I ended up sitting where I sat the following day.
Yep.
I actually put my tree stand up the first day, and I never moved it until I, killed my buck.
Right. Well, I had a game, I do believe it was towards the southeast, because the tree and the oak tree that I was planning on where the camera was that didn't go off, I got there and got to that spot, and I was like, well, there's that oak tree. I came up to that opening, found the rubs, I found the sign, and I look over to this tree, and the oak tree is literally snapped in half, and it's like laying down, and I'm like, well, I said, I still got these oaks to
There's your sign.
I got these oaks to my back, and you could tell that it was a most recent, break, like this past year, a couple months before we got there.
Yep.
And there was 2 scrapes on that tree where they broke off and stuff. So I went to the opposite side, and I sat low. I didn't sit up on the bench. I sat down into the marsh. Because I wasn't really preparing myself to shoot something or get anything that night. It was for more morning.
Yeah.
And then I told myself I was going to move up further if I don't see nothing tonight and tomorrow morning. So I set up, and I'd set up as high as I could. I made sure I sat back into the brush a little bit. It was just a small tree, and I had the creek out in front of me. It was flowing that section right there was flowing amazing. And it split. It literally went in the marsh and then come back out to the edge of the creek by the drainage. And it flowed right behind that tree that I sat up on. So I got up there, sat up. I think we're doing our texting because we had service back there this year, so that was nice.
That was nice.
Yes. And so I sat up, and I think I didn't have my first deer movement until like, I think it was like 4:30. It was kind of later. And it was a small buck, and all he did was come down. He went into the thickets and went right back up towards that pond. And now here I am second guessing myself. I'm like, I just had this buck come off this bench that I wanted to sit. I wanted to be on that bench looking down in the pond and watching that bench.
Yeah.
So now I'm down in the marsh. I got great sign. Got a creek out in front of me. I got water. I have food. I got oaks behind me. And I got the bench that I wanted to hunt. I'm eye level with it now. So I'm like, well, at least I'll see if what else. And that's when that buck came down through the thickets and went right up towards the pond.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and at this moment, I didn't know the pond was dried up.
Yeah.
So I'm still thinking it's flooded up, great water source. I think it was, when we got in there, it was 60-something degrees, right?
Yeah.
That first night.
Yeah.
And we knew the temp was going to drop the following morning. So I was like, Al, just, you're confident. And the side, we'll just sit here. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll see something on that bench, make of our confidence boost up for tomorrow evening. All right. So about 5 o'clock is when I heard something behind me. I think it was like 5:30. It was getting darker. I know that. And so I stand up. I get turned around. I look over where the oaks are, thinking. You know, I mean, there was one oak behind me. The rest of them are over on the bench in front of me and down below. And I look over and I could hear something over there by the oaks. And I'm like, man, yeah, that's about my luck. The wind's perfect for me, but horrible for him. You know what I mean? He's gonna hit my wind, my trail, the whole 9 yards. So he literally walks right behind me, wind blowing right at him. And he was a big white horned deer. Comes up behind me, stops for a second. Keeps going. He drops and turns, and behind me, I didn't, no camera light because it's all dark. It's literally the drainage. It has 3 benches, and that bench was just dark in the camera, so you can't see them. But if I turn the camera to the out, like I got another 20 minutes of daylight.
Yeah.
So he hits the bottom, and he's turning. I was like, well, he's gonna come back out this way towards me. And I said. Now he walks away from me. As he's walking away, I hear splashing, and here comes another little buck come right underneath me. As my camera is pointing the other way, I can't turn around and film him because he's literally right underneath me, just going crazy.
Yep.
So I don't know if they were together or what, but that little buck just walks off, goes the same direction towards the pond. The big buck behind me goes to the pond. Now I'm like, man, I wish I was sitting in the pond tomorrow morning. So that's the first evening for me. I had 3 bucks, 2 small ones, and that big white horn buck. And then the following morning, the excitement and everything from getting there and everything. So we're fired up. We're up early, ready to rock and roll. Get out the door. And we split from our walking spot. I'm walking up, and I got a little bit shorter walk than you, so when I got my tree stand, it was still dark. But I walked that creek right up, got into this tree, literally popped up the tree with no noise. I mean, 0, and it was dead that morning. Frost really on the ground. Yeah. Like if I wasn't in the creek, you can hear crunches. So I walked that creek good 150, 200 yards right up to the tree. Literally stepped out of the creek onto my first step, the first bee stand, or stick, and went right up the tree.
You know what? And that's a good point. Explain to people why we do that, because I found that in a couple different spots down there, and we kind of started picking up on that. Tell people why we do that.
On the creek?
Yeah.
There's a couple good ones, or good reasons. Is, for one, the creek that I was hunting, I thought it was going to be heavier, so I didn't think I was going to be able to sit up on it.
Yeah.
So
heavier flow, you mean?
Heavier flow.
Yeah.
So you can hear this. I would thought you're going to hear me step more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But was able to get closer. So when I took my step off, I'm using. I didn't bring rubber boots this year, so I had lace ups. Mm-hmm. But I use it for more sound, scent for the most.
Yep.
And then third is if you're up in your tree and you throw your milkweed, and it literally pulls. I think I filmed it that morning. Literally, you drop the milkweed, and you'd watch the milkweed hit that and that creek bottom, and it literally flow right down the creek bottom, and then it'd go up.
Yep.
So I think Jake was the first one that mentioned that to me. That two creeks or two
creeks.
No, when we crossed two creeks, and then we walked one creek. It was the creeks were flowing two different. It was like so the creek would flow this way, and it split, and it like came back somehow. It like
so you walked all the way around.
Yeah, no, the creek went around like this, and this creek went this way, and he's like, "Watch this." So he throws the milkweed. The milkweed goes down this creek like this, one way. You follow it, you threw it this way, and it literally swung right back around and came right back to us.
Yeah.
So it was a split in two creeks. You know what I mean? One creek, like it was one creek, and then this creek went this way, and this one went back, and it came back to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it. I'm trying to think, but it was two creeks that split from this way. Well, it was one creek, and then it split into two, is where I was getting at with that. Mm-hmm. But he dropped the milkweed, and you could see the milkweed follow the creek. Yeah. And then he did it this way. He's like, watch. And it hits, and it like does a spin and then goes out.
Yep.
That's how I was trying to explain it. So I use it for scent, for one, noise, and then especially setting right up on the creek, it literally flows down. It like pulls I'm going to assume it pulls your thermals and your set right down the creek.
I think it does too.
So that's where I was getting at with that. I remember Jake explaining that to me. So I tried to set up. I was going to do that with the creek or the pond when I set up on it. So those are the three reasons I like setting up on a creek. And I've done it a couple times now. And I've done it at my river spot this up here. A couple river spots here. And so I've been trying to do that on occasion. Ohio was the first time it really worked for me. Mm-hmm. And then again this year during rifle season, jumping forward a little bit, but the same thing happened this year. I was on a small creek bottom. Yep. Same thing. I walked up the creek, crossed it, jumped up in the tree stand, ended up shooting a buck. First ever being in there. Same thing. Mm. I don't want to jump too forward on that. But I use the creek for scent and noise, and then if for thermals for most of it, it seemed like it worked perfect.
Yeah, it almost like stone walls. Like if it's super windy, it's not really going to help too much. But if you just have a light breeze, your ground scent or your scent that's fallen off of you, as it's falling to the ground, I think there's a small air current that kind of follows that colder water. Yep. Especially if you have really, really warm air and then super cold water, like coming out of those drainages, I think it almost creates like that current. So anything beyond that creek, I don't think gets your scent. Right. And like I said, that's just a theory, and I think you're running along the same line of thought as I am. But also too, to expand on the other ones is like ground scent's a huge thing. Like, if you're walking into a stand, if you're walking on the leaves, on the grass, whatever, you're leaving ground scent. Yeah. And if you can step inside of a creek and, your scent's falling into the water, well, the water's going right down into the drainage. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like you're carrying that away. There's less scent there. So you're not eliminating a whole direction where deer could possibly come from because, you ever have it where, your entrance is extremely important. And if you can walk up some sort of water, even, float up a river or down a river, or lake or a pond and get right into it. I know Joe, Boogeyman there, he likes to literally canoe right up to the frickin' tree. And that's genius because you're not leaving any ground scent. And that's when a lot of deer spook. Second, is you don't make the walking through water is a different sound. I don't think deer associate that with humans. You know what I mean? Right. I think when they hear humans, they think of humans being on dry land. If they hear something in the water, they're either thinking of beaver or muskrat or an otter or another deer crossing. I don't think they associate that with human movement. And that doesn't put them on nearly as the alert as they would when they're hearing leaves crunching, especially in a human 2-foot pattern. Yep. It's not that like a deer or something with 4 legs.
Right.
When you're walking on 2 legs, you're making a way different sound than you are. And I think that, especially down in Ohio where we hunt super thick, that you have no choice but to make noise. But you do have a choice in the noise that you're making. Mm-hmm. And if you can put that to your advantage, like we have, that definitely helps your odds.
Well, right. Well, especially in the area that we hunt, too, we could be walking around and be dry as possible, like dry on these benches, and then come around a corner and here's a standing water.
Yeah.
That water you get a little bit of rain, it starts flowing.
Yep.
Well, that water's got to go down, and it's going to go down the drainages.
Yep.
So we've been trying the last, 3-4 years now, we've been trying to use that to our advantage. And it did this time because we had frost. It was 30 degrees that morning. That first morning we sat, I got in the creek, I followed up. Literally my first step was onto the bee sticks, climbed up, and it was just starting to get daylight, getting the camera situated. I could see my breath. The temperatures for the week looked horrible. 70 degrees, 80 degrees. So sitting there, get the camera all situated, and I just sit down, and I think I'm doing my interview for the morning, and I can hear them coming right down, coming right to me. And I know where the pond is, and I know where this bench is because I've scouted it and walked it. I know where so there's the marsh, a bench, a third bench is I'm going to call. So the marsh is first, second, and then the third bench, and then it somewhat flattens out. So he came from that direction, and it sounded like he was a mile away. Mm-hmm. And it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. It took him like 10, 15 minutes to get to me. Mm-hmm. And he's coming down the same way as the first buck that I saw the night before, coming right down, hit the same spot. I could see the deer. I could see just a little bit of horns, get the camera around, and he hits the exact same spot that buck did the night before. And I'm like, it's either that same buck or it's going to be a different buck doing the exact same thing. He's going to go towards that pond. I'm going to kick myself in the ass. And I'm like, I'm watching him, and he just starts raking a tree. And I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to find him in the brush. And you can see it on the camera. I'm up in the air, down, I'm over, I'm trying to get him. And finally he breaks free. And he destroyed like 10 trees by the time he finally got out to the opening where I could get a good film of him. Mm-hmm. And he come out, and that whole time I thought he was just going to turn and go right back up. Nope, he turns, comes right down towards me, gets a drink out of the creek, whole 9 yards. And he finally picks his head up, and you're going to have to wait to see the footage, but he like literally stands there and just gives me a good 3 minutes, it felt like, of just standing there just, what's going on?
I remember reviewing the footage. I was like, God, this has got to be killing Charlie.
I'm just like, I'm looking at it. He's only got the one brow tine, and I'm like, man, I don't know. It's first morning. I'm like, and I kind of like let my shoulders relax for a minute, like the grip on my bow relax, and I'm like, I don't know. And he did some turn or he turned just right, and he's like, oh, nope, he's done.
He's getting it.
So I'm filming him, and I'm doing something Jake's trying to. Normally, when a buck comes in, I'm hitting the record button. Okay, first shot, and I'm slinging an arrow, lead, anything. I usually don't give the deer time. So I told myself I was going to give it. I have plenty of time here. He ain't going this way. He's going to come right towards these oaks, these scrapes. He's already out in the open. He knows he's safe, so he's going to come right out down. He's going to give me. I got plenty of time. So I'm filming him. I'm just having a good time here, taking it all in, and he just hits the spot, does a 360, and starts walking away. And I'm like, oh. Zoom the camera out, and perfect shot. And he goes 25 yards, goes through the thickets, goes the same direction he came in, and he literally piled into the trees that he just got done rubbing when he first came down. Piled right up. This was the first year I changed up my arrows. I changed up my broadheads.
You built your own arrows this year.
I built my own arrows this year for the first time. The only thing I don't have is a bow press, but that's on the list. But everything else, I'm doing everything at home now.
Nice.
A little hobby, something to keep me at home a little bit more during. Hunting's my life, so
yeah.
It's either I'm scouting, putting cameras out, or looking at stuff to buy. So now I don't have to go too far. I can just do it at home. But that's the first time using these I can't think of what they are now.
I don't even know what broadheads used.
What
arrows did you use?
I used the Ultra arrows.
Okay.
They're supposed to help with the spine. I did tack veins. They're the Levi Morgan broadheads, Swackers. Now, I've never used them before, but they ripped that deer up.
Yeah. Well, he didn't go very far.
No, 25 yards, bled everywhere, and it didn't go straight through. Ended up hitting the other side. Did bend a broadhead, but I mean it says 2-inch cut. It left a 2.5-inch cut. It opened that deer right up.
Yeah,
I was impressed.
So it's a 2 or 2.5-inch cut.
2-inch, but it
blew it open.
It blew it open. Yeah. And no. So it's not cut on contact. It's got what do they call it? Bleeders. So it cuts in and then opens up. So it's a fresh, gets through the hide, busts through the hide, and then opens up. And I mean, there was blood everywhere. This is the first deer I've had that like that. Mm-hmm. And I still do. I still have them in my quiver. I use the Kill Zone 2-inch cuts, 2-blade. I love those. That was what I killed my 2 bucks the year before, and then the year after that, the 5-point and my other 10.
Yeah.
I love those broadheads too, but I wanted to try something new. I get stuck in my ways too much, and this year I said I'm not doing that. I had that issue with that arrow last year or the year before.
Yeah, I remember that.
On that doe.
Yep.
Thank God it wasn't a big buck.
Right.
Or like my Ohio buck, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But I told myself nothing against anybody from a chain store that sells arrows and broadheads and stuff. But when you build your own arrow, you kind of got that confidence of like, I did it. If it fucks up, it's my fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it screws up, it's my fault.
Yep.
And yeah, that happening with that arrow and stuff, I'm going to build my own arrows. I'm going to cut my own arrows. I'm going to do everything right from scratch. And that's what I did this year. And then I ended up taking this buck, and it felt amazing shooting this buck with something that I built. It was a good feeling.
Well, just put you in touch a little bit more with the process.
Yes.
You know what I mean? A little more hands-on. So, I mean, what were your plans with this? Are you going to mount this?
I am going to mount this one, yep.
Okay.
I got the cape in the freezer. So this was on the first morning, maybe 20 minutes into daylight. Great footage. You guys are going to have to wait for that to come out. But so this was our first morning. I ended up getting it all cut up and everything, packed it out. Myself, I told you guys to keep hunting, and that was a good thing.
Yeah,
but
that's a very good thing.
I ended up doing something stupid, but ended up quartering it and getting everything on one pack and literally did one trip. And it killed me.
I remember you telling me about that. I'm like, you got all of that on.
I don't.
Shout out to the Kuyu packs.
Yep, I was just gonna say that.
Dude,
I love mine.
I love
my packs.
Those things are worth every I've had mine for 5 years. It's already paid itself off.
Yeah. Well, it's been 23. I hiked out mine, yours, Jake's, mine.
Yep.
And then I did somebody's in Michigan too. I had 5 deer. 6, 7, 8, 9. I've carried almost 10 deer out with that pack so far. And it makes I'm not trying to talk you up right now on the podcast, but I mean, it was worth the money. It's a little expensive.
They make some badass gear.
Yes.
They make some badass gear. I mean, I've used everything from, cheap stuff that you get on Amazon all the way up to, what I'm using now. And there's other brands that are just as good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, if you want a testimonial, like I love Kuyu.
It's the pack that I got is the 3,600 square inch. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, 30
cubic
inch. Yep.
And it's a little bit big for what I need for the most part for my mobile hunting, but I don't have to go back to the truck. I don't have to go get another frame.
Right.
It's all there. And then this year, I shoot this deer. I take the beast stick down, beast stand. I hike that out, come back, get the deer, do all my stuff, and then I go back out. So I did that trip 3 times, once with the tree stand, once with the deer, and then once in the morning going to the spot. So I was already 6 miles in after hiking this deer out.
How was your knee feeling after that?
Tell the truth, my knee wasn't bad. It was just my muscles were, torn right up. And then I give it, I think I got back to Steve's by 1.
Yep.
So that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 4 or 5 hour, little bit of a rest, you know what I mean? Then, so we only have one vehicle, so I had to get back in the vehicle and start heading back to the parking spot. I kind of left a little early. I'm driving, and Elvin gets me the text.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, buck down.
But and then here I am hiking another 3 miles, and I got about halfway, and my body's like, no, you need a break.
You're done.
Yeah, I think it was at a certain point where I literally had to be on my hands and knees to get under some brush there.
Yeah.
And I got up, and my legs just cramped right up, and I'm like, I text you. I was like, I'm going to be a minute.
Yeah, I think we were already on the move by the time you got there, weren't you?
Nope. No, you were
okay.
you were almost done cutting up.
Quartering up.
Yep.
Okay, yep. Well, I guess that's a perfect segue. Yeah, my hunt was pretty much the same. I mean, where I had shot my buck last year, like I said, they had that one trail, one of the trails that come up right there, and the buck that I killed last year was on the same exact trail. But so going in there, we had that southeast wind, so I was like, wow, I can't quite set up right there because then my scent will be blowing right where they're coming from. So I got to kind of set like an off, wind, with the possibility still that they may smell me. Right. But it's just an off wind, and I knew that I was going to get the same wind in the evening because that's usually the same direction that the thermals drop the last half hour of shooting light there. And so I was like, I set up right there, and like I got in the tree stand. I wasn't in there for 10 minutes, and all of a sudden I look up, and right up that trail, here comes a doe. I'm like, oh, cool. And so I like sitting there, and I was filming her. I'm like, all right, man, we're already seeing deer. I was like, it's pretty warm out. I think I had my sunglasses on because it was just like beaming. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, so I kind of watched her for a little bit, and then she disappeared. And I'm thinking, okay, well, she's done moved up the drainage. Well, it was like 45 minutes later, I see her again. And I'm like, oh, she didn't move that far. And I'm like, all right, there's got to be a buck in here somewhere. And I think, and that night I did hear another deer come up that ridge, and it was grunting, and I never saw it, though. I never even saw a movement. It was so thick in there. It was a good probably 80 to 100 yards away, but I could hear it in there. I'm like, all right, well, I was like, I no need to move my stand and kind of go away from the game plan that we usually use down there, which, leapfrogging, which I guess we can go into that at some point.
Yep.
But I didn't end up seeing anything else the rest of that evening. And, obviously the next morning, doing the leapfrogging that we do, I got right back in the stand. And I remember right about the time, I don't know if it was right before or right after I got the text that you killed that buck, I had the doe come crashing down the ridge. I mean, you could hear it from a couple hundred yards away, like, I'm like, holy hell. I grabbed my freaking bow and I'm standing up and, I'm like waiting. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to go down. Yeah, so they have to come right down this trail. And sure as heck, the doe comes running right past me. But I see her, and so I put the camera up and I'm kind of just waiting, like, okay, this is probably one of the only areas that I'm going to be able to get a shot at this buck. I kind of zoomed in a little bit, and he started coming down. I could hear it plain as day. I saw her over to kind of to my right, to my 2 o'clock. And he was still up there, and he was kind of grunting, and I could hear him walking. Finally, I'm sitting there, and I'm like looking, and I catch his antlers, just his head, just his antlers, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh crap! So I pull up, I can see him. He's looking back and forth. I'm thinking maybe he's getting my wind, and because you never know how it's turning in there, and I'm like, crap. So I look up I pull the rangefinder up and I look through it, and I could just see enough to make that outline right next to, there was a little tree in the way, a big tree, and he was just to the left of it. Literally all I saw was his head. I couldn't see any vitals, and he was still about 55 yards away. So even if I could have seen it, I probably wouldn't have taken a shot that far. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a nice buck. I was like, that's definitely a shooter. And so the doe keeps kind of walking down, and he's still staying put. And I'm like, all right, well, this is my opportunity, because I'm kind of in the middle of them. He's at my 10 o'clock, and she's now at my 3 o'clock, and they have to walk right past, right? And so I'm like, oh, this is gonna piss him off. So I pull up the grunt call, and I'm like, but I'm pointing it down towards the doe, so that way he can't quite make out where it's coming from. And I'm like, and he just kind of, I could see his antlers. He's just looking around like this. Finally, he starts moving, and he just gets onto a full-on freaking nose down, just trudging right down through there. But he actually kind of turned away from me and did a little bit of a loop. And I'm like, dude. And I think that's when I texted you guys. I'm like, oh, I just had a nice one at 55 yards.
I was still after I shot my deer, I was still in my tree stand.
You were? Okay.
You texted me.
Okay.
I didn't get down yet.
Okay. So, yeah, but I mean, I was fired up. I'm like, heck yeah. So, I sit there the rest of the day, and it's really freaking warm. I think at one point I was almost down to my t-shirt. I'm like, this is just miserable. And I'm like, should I move? And I'm kind of contemplating it. And I'm like, listen, they have to come. I didn't spook them. They didn't smell me, nothing. I said, they're going to come right back up this trail. I said, the doe came within bow range. I could have shot her. I just needed that buck to go down the same trail, and he didn't. He almost winged it out away from me and then got back on her trail.
No, they came. She came from where your buck came from the year before, right?
Yes.
From the bottom, and they went up.
Yes.
So they're up above you right now.
No. This was the evening before, so they were actually coming down the ridge.
Down. Okay.
The opposite direction.
So that evening they were going.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So that evening, it's getting pretty. I know for a fact I had some other deer come through there, but it's they could be 60 yards away, and you're never going to see them with how thick it is in there. And I'm like, so there's a couple times where I grunted and snort wheezed and stuff, and I'm pretty sure they were deer, but they just weren't interested in coming to look. Probably younger bucks. And it was getting to, I don't know exactly what time it was, but it was that last good 15-20 minutes of camera light. I hear something coming up the coming up the drainage, and I'm like, here we go. I was like, I'm exactly right where I need to be. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, here comes the doe, and I can hear him grunting back there, and it's cool. I was watching the footage the other day, and you can actually hear him grunting in the background. And so I follow the doe up, and she's just kind of milling around. I didn't want to disturb anything, so I'm like, I'm not going to call. I was like, if he comes up past me, great, I'll get a shot. If he doesn't, don't go trying to call him in, because you've done that twice already today. Yep. Eventually, they're going to be like, wait a second, a smarter buck. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to call at it, nothing. I'm just going to, if I get the shot, I get the shot. Well, the doe's standing off. Once again, he's at like my 3 o'clock. She's at like my 10 o'clock. And I'm like, dude, you got to walk right past me. Well, she walked through at about 45 yards, and I had a couple windows through there. And 45 yards, I mean, like, that's kind of my max. I mean, I've tried to, poke out there beyond, and I just don't feel comfortable with it. I don't feel like that I'm giving my honest effort with it, because, like, I don't practice very much at that, so I'm not going to try killing a deer at that range. 45 and in, that's where I'm at. So she's still sitting up there, and she's about 50 yards away now, and all of a sudden he comes walking right up the ridge. He's actually 10 yards closer to me than she was, and I'm like, dude, you are so done. And like, so I actually put the camera right on my shooting lane, and I could see him down there like maybe 45, 50 yards away, and I'm like, I'm going to shoot him right here, 20 yards, 15, 20 yards. And he's sitting down there, and he'd move a little bit, and then he'd grunt, move a little bit, and then he'd grunt. And I'm like, dude. And finally, so I panned over to him, like, all right, well, maybe I might have to shoot you at 25 yards right there. Well, then he starts just going on a death march, just like, choo, 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 choo. And I'm like, oh, whip the camera back around, put it on that lane, grab the bow. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And he comes walking right into that lane. I just, boom, whack, center punched him. And, that was awesome. So he only went he did like a big loop, but, I mean, there was blood everywhere. And I was using the FMJs. I don't know if I have my bow here, but yeah.
What broadheads were you using?
I was using Rage 2-blade. Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't used a Rage 2-blade in probably about 5, maybe 6 years. And I always liked them. Don't get me wrong, but I always just like heard horror stories about them not opening up. And I think one time I had one not really open up all the way, because it's just the exit wound was just terrible, and the deer went quite a ways. But there's some other ones like the 3-blades. Like I don't do the 3-blades.
I'm not a fan of them.
I'm not a 3-blade expandable guy. I know a lot of people, they like them, but I've used them. I've used the
That's
Rage.
Just one more air.
Yeah, and the G5s, the ones, I don't even think they make them anymore, but I just didn't really care for it. Anyways, but this deer, like I said it in the video too, and you'll see it, but I literally walked up and I could see him, and his head was up and his antlers were wrapped around a tree as if he was sitting there like
looking at you,
looking at me, and I'm like, I stopped.
Shit.
I'm like, what? And then like I look and I'm like, oh no, he's dead. He's dead. There's no way. But I heard him crash. So like I shot him, and then like he ran and then stopped, and then like 15, 20 seconds later he just went, that's when he crashed. But there was just blood everywhere.
So that's the first day, first morning, first evening, all done.
Yeah, all done.
So we just go home, right?
No, I mean, I'm glad we didn't, because like I got to hunt with Tony a little bit, and you got to hunt with your dad.
Yeah,
so
that's where I was getting at with that. We literally had 8 days to hunt, and we ended up.
That was my Ohio buck. I scored him at 133 inches. I think it was 2/8, 133 and 2/8. So it was a great buck. Good 10-point. Yep, had him on trail camera pretty much all summer in Velvet. Yep. He was, I think, the biggest one I had on camera, actually. I had a really cool one. He had remember the one with the messed up antler? Yep. He looked like he almost looked like he had a triple beam, like a mule deer on one side. I think it was messed up. And the other one was great, nice, and, a great 5-point side. But I never saw him, but I did get him on trail camera in December.
Oh, you did?
That buck made it.
Oh,
I was blown away.
right on.
Yeah, so that was a buck I killed in Ohio last year. I actually have my Ohio buck here from
last year?
From 2023.
Yep.
And actually, he fell off. I had him all set up, but he fell apart. But if you do this one actually scored 134. So you guys, that video is already up on YouTube. But this is really cool. That's why, like, when you walked up to your buck, it literally matches the genetics of this one right here.
Yeah, the tines just go out forward.
Yeah. Really cool.
And these are a mile and a half?
Yeah, about a mile and a half.
Yep.
Apart. So definitely the same
especially
country.
the little kick.
I'm gonna get these ones up on the plaque. I mean, if I killed these in Michigan, I might mount them.
You did kill one like that in Michigan.
I know, but I know, but
I mount mine. I don't know. That's
I don't blame you, but I mean, like, when I got that hanging right there, it's just like
the one I shot in 23. That one's at the taxidermist right now. Shout out to Corey.
I don't think I've ever told that story, have I?
Just pieces.
Yeah. Well, I'll show you guys my biggest Ohio buck. So I had him scored, and he was went typical at 162, grossed at 171. That was this buck right here. I killed this in 2019. I did not get it on film. I was not even filming that year. I don't know if you guys remember me talking about that. I took a year off, but yeah, that was
that's the reason you shot it.
That's probably the reason I shot it, which would have made great footage because there wasn't a tree in the way. It was wide open, perfect, broadside, 30, 35-yard shot.
But how far are we talking? Yeah, I mean, from that to these, distance-wise, not far. Yeah,
quarter mile, but
not far at all.
Yeah, that's my absolute biggest buck that I've ever killed. So, right there.
That's a hog.
It is.
But Tony's got one similar.
Yep. This might be the biggest buck I'll kill in my lifetime. And if it is, I'm totally cool with that. Hopefully it stays and doesn't fall on us, Charlie.
And the bad thing is, I mean, we see those deer all the time in Ohio when we go. We have at least one of out of three of us.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, we got my dad, Uncle Jim, Jake, Hunter. They might come with us. Like this year, my dad ended up driving down. We had Tony. Out of somebody that goes down there, one of us see a buck like that.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Well, you remember that one that Tony had on camera. That was 185 inch deer all day.
Easily.
All day. That was an absolute giant.
He's got a buck like that, a big buck on the wall, too.
Yeah. Yeah, his is all of 155, 160, I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. That was another giant.
But, so we go down. We got 7-8 days to hunt. We ended up getting it done on the first full day.
Yeah, let's get a little recap of your dad's hunt.
And then, so it's me, Elvin, Tony. We always go down together. I think this is all three of us together. This is our 7th year. There's a year that you didn't make it down. It was just me and Tony. That was the year Tony shot his big one.
Yep.
And so
year after I killed that one.
Because we took your deer out. I took 2 deer out. So we took a day. We took a day to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
We took a day off.
Well, we went to West Virginia and scouted some public land.
Well, that was the second day, but we couldn't do it anymore. We took one day. We cut up our deer. We literally just sat around the house. We were sore, waiting for the text message from Tony. And I think the second day, about mid-morning, we're sitting there. We're like, we're only 45 minutes from West Virginia. Opportunities to hunt somewhere.
Yep.
Let's go scout. So we ended up scouting all day. Found a couple good spots, but it was really, there was like 6 cars, 7 cars, and
it looked like a lot of people.
A lot of people, a lot of good signs. Just a lot of people on there.
Yeah,
we'd had to go. We went deep. We would have to go all the way back to where we scouted, where we found that old ladder stand. Yeah. We'd have to go all the way back that way to hunt that.
Yeah,
and so we ended up scouting, trying to talk ourselves into doing it, but we ended up, my dad ended up coming down. You ended up hunting with Tony.
Yep.
And Man, Tony had some opportunities at the end there. It's on some nice bucks. You could film some nice bucks. And
Well, remember the big 8-point? Mm-hmm. That big 8-point I had on camera. We had him at the thorn tree at 15 yards. He hit our ground scent. And Tony, it happened so quick. Like, I didn't even get a chance to turn the camera on. Like, I was just like, shoot it. We'll get the recovery. Like, I mean, no brainer. Like, this was a big 8. This is one of the biggest 8-points I've seen.
Yeah.
That's
literally almost
it's
something
almost
like that,
but
but just an 8.
On 8-point. It was crazy. Not as heavy.
Right.
But yeah, so he comes, hits our ground set, and then he bounces, and I'm like, oh God. And that was at like 8:30 in the morning. And so we sit till like 11:30, and I'm like, all right, let's drop down the drainage here. I said, our winds just, the thermals were pushing up where all the deer were coming from. I'm like, we can't be here. I said, we got to get down. I said, otherwise we're not going to be able to hunt this again for a few days. So I said, we'll drop down the drainage there, and we'll get on something else. And so we start tearing everything down. We get the tree stand down and everything, get down to the ground. Everything's put away. Camera in the backpack, you name it. All of a sudden, like, we look up, and here comes a doe chasing a buck, or a buck chasing a doe. And I'm like, and it goes, we're like, no frickin' way. Like, and so we're like, okay. And all of a sudden, here comes a third buck. And like, so the doe kind of moseys off, but I pulled out my grunt call and I grunted at him. So then, like, the two smaller ones were sitting back there, and or the 2 bucks were sitting back there, but they're kind of smaller. Well, it comes walking out and just kind of like looks around. I'm like, no. And I knew the other one in the back was way smaller. And then finally they mosey off, and I'm like, I look at Tony and I'm like, dude, that is crazy. I said, we've been sitting here all day, and we get down and like have him come through at 20 yards. And he's like, yeah, we're just talking like this. All of a sudden we hear another deer coming. Frickin' nice 8-point. I'm like, oh my God, Tony, frickin', we're on the ground, dude. And it's walking the same path. Like, this must have been a hot doe. And I'm like, all right. So it was a nice 8-point. And so it stops in the woods there, and like, I stop it by grunting at it. And it looks, and then I snort wheeze, but there's so much thick stuff between us. Mm-hmm. And so this deer obviously couldn't make anything out. The wind wasn't, the wind was in our favor. And so he comes walking out at like 20 yards, standing broadside. And where I was standing, there was nothing in the way. I mean, it was crystal clear. Where Tony was standing, I guess there was, some stuff to shoot through. And he elected to shoot. And I immediately saw that it was low. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh man. And whether it even hit it or not. And so I'm like, oh crap, And he's like, I didn't know. He's like, I had a decent little gap to shoot through, but I saw that it hit some some vines or whatever, the briars, thorn bushes. I'm like, all right. I said, well, let's just at least just find the arrow, see what we could find. But like, I kind of had an idea where it hit, and I think it was either in the very, very low brisket, or it was in the kind of in the back of the leg there. And I'm like, oh, man, and it sucks when you don't have a camera rolling, because then you can't go back and look at it.
Right.
I mean, granted, that's how. I mean, we were raised at find the arrow, look at the arrow, then make a decision from there. Well, we found the arrow, and I mean, there was nothing on it. There was some hair and a little bit of fat, and I'm like, all right. So we ended up going up, and I mean, we're just following every trail. Like, 45 minutes to an hour goes by, and we still haven't found any blood. We saw right where the deer went too. We're following the tracks, and finally we get up, and like, I'm about like, yeah, I don't know, Tony. I think you hit that low brisket. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, I think there's some blood right there. And I'm like, well, that totally changes the game. Cause it's like, like if you hit a deer low, you look at the arrow, you're looking for blood. You've combed a couple 100 yards or so, and you don't find any blood. You know exactly what it is. But then you find a drop of blood, and it's like this instant, like, no, like I kind of have an idea where this is going to go. But like, if I have blood on the ground, you got to do what you have to do. You owe it to that animal. And we did. We spent the next 3.5, 4 hours tracking this thing. We probably found
that buck right there.
Same thing, yeah.
We barely had anything.
What didn't help there was I hit it a little bit low, and it was on a really, really steep incline. So I think I only got one lung with the entrance.
And he was going uphill for some reason.
Yeah, which was weird. But no, so we ended up following it, and I mean, we had maybe a dozen or so pin drop blood, and we followed it, like 500-600 yards, and finally I pulled up the Onyx. I'm like, Tony, I was like, this deer's gone uphill twice.
Yeah.
I said, that's it is what it is, unfortunately. And so we ended up moving down. We ended up going to get into another drainage where, I'd killed a buck before and had hunted quite a bit, and I knew the deer were going to be in there. So I set up in the tree, and we get to hunt, and we ended up seeing a few deer. I think a couple does and a small spike or a 3-point or something like that. And let's getting down to the last little bit of light, and we hear something grunting up in the drainage, and we're like, what? We thought, but there was no running. It wasn't chasing. It was almost like it was sitting there. Bruh, bruh. I'm like, all right. So I grunted back at it. And about 15 minutes later, here comes this Amish kid down the. I'm like, oh man. And so he comes walking right through. We maybe had 15, 20 minutes of shooting light left anyways. So it was like, all right, whatever, So we got down. I talked to him. He was like, oh, I'm sorry for disturbing your hunt. And I'm like, no, you're good, man. It's whatever. I mean, I didn't know you were there. You didn't know I was there. It's public land hunting. And I said, are you gonna hunt there tomorrow? And he's like, no. I said, okay. I was like, well, we left our stuff up. We're gonna hop right back in the tree stand. He's like, okay, yeah, we won't be here. I said, okay, and on we went. The next morning we get in there, and me and Tony literally saw deer all day. Yep. I mean, I don't think an hour or hour and a half went by where we didn't have some sort of action, like a deer moseying down the ridge. Had a couple decent bucks come through, and it was like last light, maybe 40 minutes left shooting light. I hear something coming, and I look up on the ridge, and it's probably about 100 yards away. And dude, I just see that big 8, the one that we had come in, and he got our ground scent and jumped out of there. Same buck. So I'm sitting there, dude, and
you got great footage.
I got great footage of him.
Great footage.
I got great footage. So I grunted at him and I snort wheezed at him. And he comes marching right down the ridge, and he stops at 55, 60 yards. Broadside, perfect wide open.
And
I'm like,
Tony's a 20-yard.
He's a 20-yard and in,
that's
man.
It,
that is Tony. Maybe 25. That's just, yeah. And I sat there just looking at this deer, and I'm trying to film it, and my heart's racing. I'm like, dude, this is a giant 8-point. I was like, you don't see 8 points like this very often. And we, I don't know if it was the last night. I think it was one of the last nights we were going to hunt.
Yes.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And I just filmed that deer walking away, and I'm just like, I looked at Tony, and I'm like, you may really have to start considering getting one of those crossbows. I mean,
that would have been a dead deer.
That would have been a dead deer, yeah.
Well, we say that, but my dad had an opportunity like that, too.
This is true, but he wasn't really ready.
So we, just to forward a little bit, we get on Tony's case about a crossbow. We had to stop at Cabela's on the way home and look at the crossbows.
We looked at the crossbows for him.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Tony doesn't come home or back to Ohio next year or this coming up year with a crossbow.
I think he's tired of seeing those nice bucks at 45 plus yards, knowing that he's not going to throw an arrow at them. And I think he's really thinking about it, because I don't think he shoots that heavy of a poundage.
No, he doesn't. I think 55, 60, I think he said maybe.
Yeah, he doesn't. I mean, if they're not inside 25 yards, he said he's like, I'm just knocking. It's not worth it.
And I mean, we've had a hard winter this year here up in Michigan, but I mean, I shoot year round, 24/7. Yeah. So if you're going by my house middle of June, I'm hunting, or not hunting, but I'm shooting my bow. So at 60 yards,
you got the old lady out there pulling your arrows.
Yeah, I'm. You know, what I mean, at 60 yards, I'm shooting 60 yards. My sights are. If I'm shooting 60 yards, if that 8-point comes in at 60 yards, I'm flinging an arrow at them.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do it all summer. I literally practice all summer.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I like to do it. That's a hobby I like to do. I shoot guns. I shoot bows. That's what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got a woman that likes it, and she does the same thing. Mm-hmm. She don't hunt, but she likes to shoot.
Yeah.
So, but talking about that Amish kid, that was this. That Amish kid walked when he left you guys. He walked the opposite way, didn't he?
Yes.
Well, that was that first night. No, that first morning I hunted with my dad. Mm-hmm. And so I've hunted years with my dad in the box blind during rifle season a couple times. If you've watched any of our videos, we filmed his first hunt 2 years ago. I think it was 2023, 2022 or something, 2022. Yep. And he shot a buck. I was with him. So I've hunted with him during rifle, but it's been years since I've sat in a tree stand with my dad, since I was like 12. And I was lucky enough to have my beast stick down there and stand, and then I also have an extra beast stand. So first time ever had 2 beast stands in the same tree. Mm-hmm. And I was able to hunt with my dad, and it was light enough for him to carry it in. And we hunted that morning, and we're going through all the trail camera pictures, and I said, there's still a couple nice dandies in there, Dad. I said, I know you want to hunt with Steve, but if you want to hunt with me, no, I'm coming down, I'm going to hunt with you. Yeah. I said, okay, so I'm gonna set my tree stand back up. You bring my extra beast stick or stand down, and we'll set it up that morning. All right, so we did the same thing. Hit the creek bottom, walked the creek, got to the tree. Well, so where that big buck, that first night I hunted, that big buck crossed behind me, and he hunts out with a crossbow. So I said, well, I can do a little bit of set up a little bit higher and attack a little bit more of this marsh and this drainages and these benches. He can shoot a little further. He can shoot a little bit further with confidence. You know what I mean? So rather than sitting down on the marsh and walking the creek and jumping in, we still walked the creek, but we just literally walked up side of the hill, the back side of where I was sitting, literally right behind, maybe 20 yards up the first bench, got up in the tree. And if you'll see it in the footage, it literally looks like we're like 100 feet up in the air. Yeah. Looking down in the marsh. And right on the runway of where that big buck came through, and you'll see it in the film, it literally opens up back here. Like, he could shoot 60 yards if he really wanted to. He could shoot 50 yards down to the marsh. We could watch that whole bench. All we had to do was put one more tree stand up. We put a tree stand up, but that morning walking in, that same drainage, all I could see is flashlight after flashlight after flashlight. I'm like, somebody's in here already. Yeah. We started walking, the flashlights disappeared. I'm like, all right. We keep going, thinking maybe they got up in a tree stand, because there's a couple old ladder stands up in there. Nope. So we get up there, put the tree stand up, we sit. Nothing. And my dad's a little older, so he can't sit the whole day like we normally do. Yeah. So we get down, we get with Steve, and Steve sat back there with us down at the bottom.
For the afternoon hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we walk back up, and we're trying to pay attention. Where does these guys walk off the trail? Whatever. So we go and we sit. We see 4 does come down, 2 small bucks behind them. That's all we saw that evening. And on the way back and get with Steve, Steve's like, yeah, there's 12 Amish kids just walked by me. 4 came out of your guys' drainage, 4 came by me this way, and 4 was sitting down here by me. Yeah. We're like, really? And that was the same night you saw the Amish kid. So we get out to the truck, and there's half of them out there. There's lights behind us. Yeah. And I think Chad hunted that night too. So we get out to the truck. We're talking to the Amish kids, and there's like just totes everywhere. Like they don't have a vehicle there. The vehicle's got to come pick them up.
Yeah.
So there's totes everywhere. They're putting their hunting clothes in the totes and stuff, and we're like, we're waiting on our transportation, and I don't know how. I think that's how they explained it.
Yeah.
And we're still missing 2 guys, and the one guy comes up. He's like, "Where's so and so?" And where's brother Tom? And we're listening, and you come back to the truck, and you're explaining to us where you're at, and they're still waiting on him, And we get back to the house, and you're explaining your story, and we're like, "Oh, that must be fucking brother Tom that they're waiting
brother
for."
Tom.
And you totally went the opposite way. No phone, no nothing. So I wonder how they weren't there that morning, so they must have found him.
Yeah, they must have found brother Tom.
But that evening, that morning, we didn't see much. The evening, we saw them little bucks. So we go in the next morning, and I told my dad, I said, Ohio's a little different. You know, I mean, they'll like, don't get me wrong, I shot mine right at daylight.
Mm.
But Elvin's shot bucks at this time. He's seen bucks at this time. I've seen them at
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. I said, I know you don't want to sit all day. You can't do that.
Yeah, it's tough.
I said, but let's try to push it till 11.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. Give me enough time to get out, get something to eat, come back in. And so about, I have to look at the phone or something, but it was like 10:40. Mm-hmm. And Steve texted and said, I just saw 2 bucks. All right. And I had to use the bathroom, and Dad's like, let's give it 20 more minutes. I said, well, I'm going to climb down and use the bathroom. I'm going to try something. He's like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm just going to try something. And I was trying to, it was kind of a dull morning. We didn't see nothing. Great morning. It wasn't real hot, but it was starting to get hot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get down, I grab the rattling horns. I use the bathroom. I grab those rattling horns, and I'm just rolling around on the ground trying to get a laugh out of my dad. And he's cracking up laughing. Like, I can hear him laughing from the tree. So I'm rolling around in the trees. I'm doing the hunting public style, just fucking hitting the horns together, throwing leaves in the air. And he's laughing.
Clash of the Titans.
Oh, just having a ball, just being loud as possible. And so I hurry up and I throw him down on the ground. I climb up the tree stand. I'm breathing hard. I think you can hear it in the camera. And I grab my Red Bull, and I'm drinking it, and I'm like leaning against the tree, and my dad's in the front, I'm in the back of the tree, and I'm leaning against, and I'm talking to him, and he turns around, sits down, and he's still kind of somewhat giggling, and I was like, that'd be pretty funny if this works, son. Was it 2 seconds later, he's like, big buck, big buck, big buck, big buck, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I take a drink of my Red Bull, and I didn't drink it, I chugged it, I chugged the rest of it, and I put it in my pocket, and he's like, no, big buck, and I just poke over his head like this, and holy big buck. Grab the camera, wrap it around, and I'm trying to get on him. And he's coming in, and his head's just like, where is this? Where is this fight going on?
Where'd all that racket come from?
And that buck, literally perfect, 55 yards. We ran. I'm over here. You can hear the clicking of me ranging him. I ranged it once, and so we knew it was between that 50 and 60 yards. Yep. So he's in the middle there. And I'm clicking. You can hear me clicking. And I clicked the last time, and he didn't give me time to tell him the range. And he just flings an arrow, and it goes right over its back. And I'm like, you just shot over its back.
He thought it was further away than what it was.
No, he put it 55-yard pin on it, everything. And he's like, no, I hit it. I said, Dad, I think you shot over its back. Yeah. No, I think he just, when I shot, he ducked. I said, well, let's get down. Same thing. Let's go find your arrow.
Yeah.
I think I know where it's at. Let's find your arrow. We get down, no blood. And he literally jumped up and ran up that bench and hit that flat and took off. And I said, let's get home, put it on the big screen. Yeah. I can get it on there. We can watch it in slow-mo. And, he shot right over its back.
Mm-hmm. That deer basically just scared it, so it ran away and looked back to see what the heck it was.
Yeah, and he shoots all the time, so he's like...
He's just worked up.
He's like, there's no way. So we go out, we grab the target, we shoot, and at 55 yards, he is like 11 inches high. And I'm like,
that's right.
Oh my God, what'd you do? You know what I mean? What happened? Did we hit it? Did we do this? So we're over here messing with the scope and everything. Steve comes out and on top, my dad's only had a crossbow maybe a few years.
Yeah.
That's this advanced. Normally it's just a normal crossbow. Turn it 1 or 2. Nothing fancy. But he's got a, I can't think of what they're called now, but a fancier one.
Really nice scope.
$2,500 fucking crossbow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it goes off how fast the bow is.
Yes.
And he's over here turning it like a scope. So
like
you change it.
Power.
Yeah, he's on the zoom. So that changes a lot.
Yes.
And, he didn't know that. And Steve's like, oh, no, go put it back there. So we put it back to where, I think it was like a 400. Put it back to 400, put it 55, dead nuts. Go to 25, dead nuts. You move it to like 300, fucking 11 inches high and like 5 inches low or something.
Huh.
We're like, holy crap. So we ended up taking the set screws, tightening them up, put a little scratch on it so he knows to look at it every time, just like a regular bow now.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not going to screw that over again.
Yeah.
So he was kicking himself in the butt because it would have been the biggest buck, or it would have been the biggest buck he would have shot in Michigan or in Ohio, because it was a nice. It was either an 8 or a 7. I know a 7 for sure, maybe an 8, but it was nice, tall. Tall and tight, just huge. I got trail cam pictures of it, and it's literally like. Just straight up.
High and tight.
Just nice buck. Just perfect. Came in at 11 o'clock. Perfect shot. Wide open. And shoots right over his back.
Isn't that crazy?
So we sat one more full day. Morning and evening. And I think we saw a couple does. And then he stayed after we left.
Yep.
One or two more days.
Yep.
And so on, but that was the first time I've sat in a tree stand and since I was like 12 with him. So it was even though we missed, but it was still a good hunt because it still happened. You know what I mean? He's he's kind of addicted to it. You know what I mean? Because he's took out, 3-4 times now. He's took the bee sticks and stand out now.
So he's getting the hang of that.
Yeah, so he's 56, 57 now.
Yeah.
He doesn't have.
I think Tony's 58, and I think he was a year older than your dad.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And he does.
Close.
Tony's more active than my dad, healthy wise. You know what I mean? Tony fucking volleyball, gyms and runs and stuff. But my dad, you know what I mean? He's not. He's a skinny guy, but he's not as active.
Yeah.
And he loves the bee sticks and stand because, for one, he didn't buy it, so he likes that. But
he use all your stuff.
He likes just to call me up and go, "Hey, can I borrow this?"
I think I get that tomorrow morning.
But it's easy on his back, and
it
like paperweight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just fucking hikes in. So he ended up his last morning ended up shooting an 8-point out of that same tree and everything. He ended up hiking quartering it up and taking the stand out, but. He called me. I can hear it in his voice, and he's like, "Yeah, I got one. It's a small one, but I didn't want to go empty-handed." I said, "Hey, a buck's a buck, right on public land. You know what I mean? You normally hunt with Steve. This one was public land, right out of the bee stand, perfect. Yeah. Now the work begins." He's like, "Yeah," I could hear it in his voice. I said, "All right, you start cutting it up, and I'll give you a call here in a minute." So I hang up the phone and. I call a guy that we've met years prior. I call him up and I say, "Hey, are you perhaps hunting?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Are you hunting in Ohio?" "Yeah." I said, "Do you mind doing me a favor?" "What's that?" I said, "You hunting this morning?" No. I took the morning off. I had some issues with the night before." I said, "Okay." I said, "How close are you from where I hunt?" And he's like, "Not that far. I'm staying right around the corner."
Yep.
I said, "Well, my dad hit one back in about a mile and a half from where you would be able to park." He's like, "Yeah, what do you need?" I said, "You mind going back there and helping him bring it out?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." I said, "Let me get my boots on."
That was
Sent
really
him
cool.
a pin drop. He literally walked up. Ozzy's like, my dad's like, "Hey, you Ozzy?" And Ozzy's like, "Yep." My dad's like, "Oh, thank God." So he ended up taking the whole deer out for my dad, and my dad carried the tree stand out. So he's like, "Oh, thank God." And then my dad ended up losing a knife like a mile back there somewhere on the trail.
Yeah.
And Ozzy ended up finding it like 4 days later.
Okay.
Just walking.
Well, he ended up killing a buck down there.
He ended up killing a nice one down there.
Yep, that was a nice buck.
I don't know if he was in our area or if that other area that he was hunting.
The picture he took, he was right there over by the pond.
Yeah,
you could see it in the background. But
I was going through all my trail camera pictures. Like,
I didn't have
one of the ones on.
I didn't have that deer on camera. No.
I had some of Tony's on my laptop, so I went through and seen if Tony had any of them on camera.
Yeah,
he didn't have that one on camera too, so that was in between us. There's just a lot of nice bucks down there.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I know it's hit and miss. I mean, like this year, like
this was our first year going down as early as we did too.
Yeah,
so that was new to us.
I think I liked that. I think that I liked going down there.
We somewhat beat the traffic.
Yes.
In the woods, and then I think we got more buck movement.
Yes.
I think on like moving.
Yeah,
like this is the most
we killed our bucks on the same day. Was it the 28th of October?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Halloween. Yeah, 28th.
This is 28th. Yeah. So that was because remember I said that was like the first buck I've killed in October in a really, really long time, and I've hunted there. I mean, anywhere from the 27th all the way up till the 13th of November. And like I've been driving back to Michigan from Ohio the day before opening day. Mm-hmm. And it's always, I can't say that there's a specific time, but like I've never not seen deer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if it's on the 13th of November or the 15th of October. I think you're going to see deer. I think you're going to change your game plan a little bit. You know, I don't think... I think the first week in November would probably be the best if there wasn't as many people in the woods.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that would be the best time if there wasn't so many people. But also, too, you know, that second week in November, when I went down there a couple times in the second week and did just fine. You know, I mean, I think I killed a buck on the 10th. I killed one on the 8th. I missed one on the 12th.
My first time down, you ended up shooting. I ended up shooting that one, then found it, and you shot out that big one.
Yeah.
That year,
giant deer.
That first year was the coldest I've ever had. We've had warm temps ever since. That was the coldest.
Yeah, it definitely has been
literally cold every day that year. That first year I was down there. So in my mind, I was like, oh, it's going to be cold like this every year. It's going to be nice, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Following year, no, hot. Following year, hot. Following year, hot.
80 and sunny, folks. Oh, great.
But
sit in that tree stand and bake all day.
But all three of my bucks, all those temps were hot, you know what I mean? Just like any other season, like any other deer hunting, you know what I mean? You wait for them cold fronts. Yeah. But all three of my bucks that was able to take home. I've shot and hit some deer and missed some deer down in Ohio. I fling an arrow almost every year.
It's so just thick.
I finally brought some home. The ones I did bring home, they were the cold fronts. Mm. Those were the cold morning or the cold evenings.
Yeah.
So I think that one was a
I
little
killed
warmer,
that
right?
I killed that on November 2nd, I think.
But it was warm.
It was warm. Yeah, it was definitely warm. It wasn't 80, but it was probably like 65.
Well, you shot that 1 point.
It was 70. It was 75, 80 degrees out that day.
And that was the same morning.
I shot at 12:30 in the afternoon.
But that morning it was cold.
Yes, it was.
And it hit like 10 o'clock, and it was like...
Well, there's such it cools down so much, especially if we don't have any clouds.
Yep.
Oh, my God. It's crazy. Like, the day before, it'll be like 80 degrees out, and then, like, you go there the next morning, and it's like 45, but it warms up so quick as soon as that sun comes up that the thermals almost feel like a gust of wind.
Yep.
It's insane, but you can tell the difference because it's a consistent pull rather than a breeze that just kind of hits you.
Oh, we leave the truck, and it's a good warm temp in the morning. And then when we start walking in, it just slowly drops.
Yeah.
And it gets colder
Yeah.
and colder.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different hunting. It's good hunting. It's made me a better hunter, I would say.
Yeah.
Since I've hunted Ohio, it's just opened my eyes a little bit more. So.
Well, you definitely realize how different terrains call for different tactics. You know, the deer are different. They see similar pressure, but it's so thick down there in some of those areas with thorn bushes and stuff that you almost have the deer don't necessarily rely on their eyesight nearly as much. I feel like the deer down there are better at navigating thermals and wind.
Yes.
Way better. Because they will purposefully, like you could be sitting somewhere and they will purposefully go exactly where your wind is going to go. And it's like, how do they know? Well, it's because they're used to traveling that. They're used to the hunting pressure being in certain areas. And they know at a certain time frame, usually, and I feel like, you know, they're more sensitive to the wind than we are. I think they know, okay, thermals are dropping, I can go. Because if anything's right there where I want to go through, if I come up this trail, I will smell it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I will smell if danger's there. And that's why when you get into an area where you're in a drainage, and you got to almost hunt that just off wind. I mean, you're playing Russian roulette. Yep. But I mean, look, it paid off for me this year, paid off for me last year. And I think I used to always play it so safe. Like, nope, I gotta have the wind exactly hitting me in the face. And I've almost evolved my thinking on that, where it's like, you know what? Like, screw it. Let's let them think they got a little bit of the wind.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of I'm a little more aggressive, I guess, if I put it that way. I'm a little more aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, the creek, when Jake explained the creek splitting off like that and then hunting the middle of the creeks, and then going to Ohio and having that happen, that big buck that first night that come up behind me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I dropped milkweed after he went through. The other buck went through. I dropped a couple milkweeds, and you can just watch the milkweed go that way. It literally did not go up. It didn't go up towards that bench to him. And I walked the creek, so I didn't have no ground scent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he literally, I was eye level with that buck behind me, and the wind, to me, felt like the wind was blowing into my face, and he hit my wind behind me, and he didn't even... Nothing. But I had that bench right behind me, so I don't know if the wind was just hitting that bench and just right down the creek. But like I said, I had that two creek. I keep saying two creeks. It's just one creek. It splits. You know what I mean? It goes around one goes in the marsh, one edges, and I'm in the middle. So I got both of those creeks flowing real well in between. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Flowing, making those thermals pull down. Yeah. So it's one creek, two creeks going around like this. But I think that's what helped me with that buck behind me. And I'm like, hey, you're staring at it. You're like, oh, yeah, he's gonna take off any minute. No, nothing. He's just
doing his thing.
Like he knows. You learn. I've learned a lot from Ohio with them drainages, them benches, and the marshes are just way different.
Yeah, it's made me a better hunter.
Yeah, way different.
So we got Michigan.
We go down there to shoot something like that, but when we have stuff like this go in front of us and we're from Michigan, we're like, yeah, I'm not going to wait around. I think I'm going to shoot this one.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, it's
a 135-inch deer.
Especially where we hunt. I mean, this deer here is, this is just about the same size as the frozen trigger buck. I mean, people go crazy about a deer like this in Michigan. Everyone knows about a deer like this in Michigan. Mm-hmm. We don't see deer like that in Michigan. Not here. No. Not very often. Maybe one every 10 years, someone will get one on trail camera. The whole community will hunt it. Yep. It'll get hit by a car on I-75. And
why do you got to bring shit up like that? Why do you got to bring stuff up like that?
Doesn't it seem like that's how it happens, though?
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, look at the big deer that have been killed like a couple days before the season by a car.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and multiple people had that deer on camera or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just the big difference. I mean, if you want to go chase different age class deer, or not even so much, because I think this was a 3.5-year-old deer.
Right.
The other one was definitely, the one I killed in 23 was definitely a 4.5-year-old.
And the bodies, you know what I mean? They're 200-pound deer we shoot down in Ohio.
They're nice deer. They're nice deer.
Yeah.
They eat really good.
And then we come home. We had we had a week.
It was nice. I'm not going to lie. It was really nice.
Nice little break. We didn't, normally we sit all day, 7 days. You know what I mean? Normally it takes Elvin like 3 days, then he shoots a deer in Ohio. It takes me 8 days. So shooting one on the first day was like a game changer for me. But normally we're sitting all day for like days on end. Yeah. And then we come home, have a day with the women and family, and then we go right to rifle hunting. But this past year we had a week off.
It was nice.
Yeah, it was.
It was definitely nice.
Well, I didn't take a day off. Any time I had time that wasn't hunting, I was hunting one buck, but I never ended up getting them. Somebody else did on opening day, but we still had a good year.
I remember seeing the pictures of that deer. It was a good buck.
Mm-hmm. And I ended up winning the buck pull.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good feeling.
It's a big deer.
But you ended up with 2. Jake ended up with 2. I ended up with 1.
What a year. Well, you knew the 3 bucks that I was chasing.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like I said, I mean, I went in, threw some cameras in this area, and I had them in there already because of elk season.
Yep.
So, and I ended up getting some decent deer on camera on the outer skirts of basically where I would actually consider deer hunting. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go in there and scout that. I said, I know that area. I've hunted it before. I said, I'm going to give it an extra look this year. Went in, threw in some trail cameras. I think I put in 6 Tacticams right off the get. I put 6 of them in there. And actually, the buck that I ended up killing on the 3rd day is the one that I jumped. I jumped him out of a bed. It was on like September 25th or somewhere around there. And I ended up getting him on camera about 150, 200 yards from there inside the swamp. And that was on the 27th. That was the first time I had him on camera. And then from there, I had him on camera a handful of other times on, particular cameras. Then all of a sudden, the Crab Claw 10 showed up. And then the big 8-point showed up, the high and tight, high one. And that one right there, by that point, I was getting into, second week of October, I started getting all these bucks on camera, and I'm like, all right. And I even had a couple nice bucks in some other areas I told you about.
Yep.
I didn't end up killing that one. I sent you the picture of the person that did kill it. They posted it online. That was a giant. But I only had that buck on camera once. So I had a couple other nice ones in there too. So I was kind of keeping an eye on that area. But then everything kind of kept just pointing me right to this spot. And I'm like, I kept getting bucks on camera. And the more cameras I put in there, the more and more I said, dude, these deer are just living here. They're not going very far outside of there.
Right.
And I think when it's all said and done, I moved a lot of cameras into that area. So I probably had about, I think between 10 and 12 cameras in there. And this is, I don't know, square mile.
Yep.
Something like that, maybe a little more. But I have all in that area, all the different little pinch points and travel routes. Areas that I would hunt next to, I wanted to know if deer would go in there. And I had them on all throughout October. October 8th, October 15th. Middle of the frickin' day.
You had a bunch of bucks, but you had 3 bucks that you were targeting.
3 bucks I was targeting, yeah. I had a handful of other...
You were trying to figure out where they were going, if they were over here.
I wanted to know the exact route that they took there, so that way when I was going in to hunt them... Because I was planning on going in to hunt them the week that we were back. I wanted to go in and bow hunt. Because I only bow hunted the area twice.
Right.
October's like... Unfortunately, I work for myself now, but my October's pretty much shot because that's my busiest time for trees. And so, I do not, unless I get away, where it's I go to Wisconsin for 3 or 4 days, I don't get to hunt in October around here because I just don't have the time.
Right.
I can get done at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but typically if I do get done, I got to go fix a chainsaw. I got to go, quote some other jobs and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's extremely difficult for me. And I pack all that stuff into October so that way I have November almost completely off. That's just, it works for me. So, but yeah, these $3, I hammered them down, and I could even see, like, the one that I ended up killing on opening day, I had him on 6 different cameras in one day. Mm-hmm. And, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 of those were between the hours of 8 a.m. and dark. And I'm like, dude, I remember texting you.
Text me,
I text you, I'm like, dude, this thing, he's going to get himself killed.
He needs to stop moving around.
He needs to stop moving around. I think it might have been Ohio or something.
Yeah.
But I kind of singled it down to this one little spot. And, it's the same thing. You find these spots and you hunt them real hard. They're only good for a year or two.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you got to wait until that mature buck comes back in
or takes over that spot.
Exactly. To take over that area. And he starts inhabiting that. And then you can go back in there a few years later, figure out how he uses the land.
Yep.
How many spots do you have like that where you go in, throw in a whole handful of cameras? If you don't have a buck in there you don't like, boom, you move them right out.
Yep.
There's no point in being there. Like I mean,
no, you can have a 1 buck 1 year that you killed.
Yeah.
Plan, put the cameras up.
Yeah.
Go in the following year. Okay, another mature buck just hit the same spot. Right on. This is 2 years in a row. Right on. I'm gonna put the cameras. I know he's crossing here. I know he's going here. Then you go check those cameras or have those cameras, and you're like, no, he ain't here.
Yeah.
You move those cameras just a little bit. Oh, now he's traveling this way.
He switched up his game.
No, this buck came in here. He took over the bedroom, but he took this door off. He's put it over here now.
Yeah,
now he's coming over.
He's
this
rearranging
way.
the house.
Yep, this is my place now. I bought this house.
Yep.
This is how I'm gonna do it. This is how I'm gonna have my bedroom.
Yep.
Oh, that was the kitchen. No, that's the bedroom. Now the kitchen's over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now I take that way to the garage now.
Yep. So that changed. Like that's the biggest thing I would have to say that I've learned from my 2022 buck is that right there. Like, and he wasn't the same every year. That was the hardest part of that buck.
Yeah, he switched up the game plan.
I'm not saying cameras are everything. Cameras is just one piece of the strategy that I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to use and what I'm doing. The entrance is the biggest thing. That's why I'm using the camera is to figure my entrance out. Not so much intel on the deer. It's
like, am I okay walking through that area in the morning?
Yep.
Or if I walk in there in the morning and I come out, am I screwing that for the evening hunt?
Is he traveling that same spot that I want to go through? Because if that's the case, I don't want to go through.
You can't go through there.
No.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. You know what I mean? You sit here and you said I had 12 cameras in the spot. Those 12 cameras are trying to figure out how he's coming into this spot. You picked your one spot. Now you're trying to get your plan together, get a strategy figured out. Now you got to figure out your entry into that spot. You know what I mean? So that's what I think we use cameras more, not so much intel on the deer, like what deer are in there, and then figure out how they're getting there.
Yes.
We already found it. It's daylight. You know what I mean? You said you had that buck 6-7 times, all like 6-7 days in a row, just moving around 6 different cameras. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That tells you a lot. Like, holy shit, how am I gonna? I need to figure out where he's going. Okay, he's on this camera. Okay, but he crossed that camera. Well, he's over here, but he crossed that camera again. Oh, he's over here. Well, he crossed that camera again. Oh, it's that middle camera. Now I got to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, where's he at in the middle of the day?
He's literally all the way around, and now you're like, man, this deer's like moving around. Where am I gonna come in from? You know what I mean?
He was insane. I mean, he was like a nomad. I still think he was only 3.5. I mean,
the first one.
Yeah, I don't think he was a 4.5-year-old. I think he was 3.5. He had a great body. Had a obviously a nice rack, but I still think he was only a 3.5-year-old. Just his behavior. Yeah. Like he shouldn't have been in that area with those other bucks. I mean, the buck that I killed, that 7.5-year-old, then that crab claw 10, that was at least a 4.5, if not 5.5-year-old deer. They were ass beaters. Those were warriors.
Might be a reason why you had them on all those cameras too. Just the mother bucks just, well,
he was basically a satellite. Yeah. And I had a handful of other bucks in there too that had I got them on camera quite a bit too in random spots, and I'm like, okay, they don't really have a line of pattern or routine. They're not really operating efficiently. That's indicative of a younger deer. Yep. That's an immature deer. They just go wherever the wind takes them. When you see a deer specifically dotting certain spots and checking them routinely, that is an efficient deer. That's your 3.5, 4.5-year-old bucks, even 5.5, that know the game. Yep. They're efficient. They're going to do as much breeding as they can. They know exactly how to do it. They're not just willy-nilly running around like, hey, where's the ladies, Yeah. They know what to do, and they know they have a game plan just like we do, and that's how you have to kill them. And
them older bucks, the patterns are more consistent, but their patterns are way more intelligent than the mother bucks. The patterns of them little bucks are all over the place. You're like, why are you doing that? And then the next day, all right, that makes more sense. But the mature deer have a good pattern, but it's an intelligent pattern.
Do you ever, whenever you get a deer on camera, let's say you're sitting there on the couch and, it's whatever, like you didn't make it out to hunt, or, you get a message, hey, boom, you got a nice buck on camera. Do you ever pull up your phone and look at the wind direction for that spot right then and there?
Yeah.
I do all the time.
So if it's one of the, let's just say the buck that got shot on opening day that won the buck poll, whenever Allie gets here, or you see Allie, you could ask her. I have a notebook literally at home. When that buck hit a camera and it went off, if it was a daylight picture, I was figuring out exactly which direction he just came into that camera. Where's the wind? So he must have came in from here. I have it wrote down, like that buck was a 6.5, 7-year-old buck.
Easily.
And that I started chasing that buck the same time I chased that other 6.5 I shot.
We got footage of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got footage of him.
And so he was easily 6.5, easily. But yeah, every time I'd get a picture of one of those bucks, I'd put more time into it, more homework. Like I'd pull up Onyx. Okay, he's at this camera. The wind's blowing this way is what it says.
Where's he coming back from?
Yeah.
Or where's he going?
You know what I mean? Where he got shot this year, I had one camera, and it's literally where the guy shot it. Literally, I still have not picked that camera up because I'm scared. Not scared. It's just more like it's going to be another stab to the heart type of thing. Where he shot the buck, there's a camera. I don't know if that guy know it's there, but I don't know if I got the shot on camera, but I know for a fact I got him probably gutting the deer or something.
Yeah.
So where that camera was is because there was a little bit of doe traveling, and I was like, well, I have never had this buck over there. I'm going to put a camera up anyways. I'd be stupid not to. I got all these does.
Yeah.
And come to find out, all that homework I did, here's this buck that just got shot and still teaching me something.
Yes.
Like,
darn it.
Now I got to look into this. And I did. That spot was done. I had one more buck in there I wanted. He was probably 4.5. He was on my radar, but so in Michigan, I pick a deer and I try to go after that deer.
Yep.
It's just who I am. It has been for the last 6-7 years. I
love it. That's the way that I want to hunt.
So I have bucks that I try to stay on the back radar where I don't do as much homework. I just leave them there. Okay, they come across. I'll write it down. Put a note. Hey, that buck is for the following year if I do chase that buck.
Yeah.
So I had one more buck in there, tall and tight, real nice buck. And so I was like, wind was right. I had this one spot. It was a bedding spot for that big buck. But the wind had to be right, and it was right for opening day, but I had a shitload of people in there, so I didn't want to blow it out too bad for the first sit for the opening day buck. That's not a big thing for me. If I put one on the buck pole, I put one on the buck pole. So I got in there and hunted and ended up learning that my entrance wasn't the greatest. During season, there was a lot of sign where I wanted to enter, but it wasn't there when I scouted it.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to shoot this buck. This buck is out of here. I haven't had him on camera in a while. I did want to hunt that spot. I hunted it one full day. Saw little bucks. I got back out of there. The following day, I went back in there and blew that spot up. Mm-hmm. I said, or them other guys might still be hunting here, but I'm going to scout during season, see what this is, because I've never been in here. So I blew it out, ended up finding where that big buck was bedding. You could tell it was like the reason I know this is because of the buck that I shot in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
After I shot that deer, it was like a ghost town in that cedar swamp. Like, there were maybe a couple does were up in there, but like buck sign was like done.
He was the only one living in there.
He was the only one living in there.
Yeah.
So when I went in there during season, there was literally like scrapes everywhere, you know what I mean? But nothing fresh.
Right.
Like, it was dead. Like, I knew it, you know what I mean? I knew for a fact this was that spot. I mean, he was just shot just this far away where that camera's at. So it was dead. So I blew that up.
The big one you're talking about.
Yeah, the big one. So I blew that up to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned some on an old buck with a lot of experience. You know, I mean, that buck was 7.5 year old, and I was still learning stuff as he was already dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So chasing those mature bucks compared to them 3.5 year olds in Michigan, the patterns are way different.
Yeah.
And I think I got off the train a little bit on that one, but the pattern that those older bucks teach you is insane.
They're far more efficient. They travel the same routes more consistently. They travel during daylight less.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes it that much harder. It's like you can throw a camera out into an area where a big buck's living. You may not get him on camera because he's not going to continue coming down that same area. Now, if you put in, like, I know too, is like, you know, when I'm doing like my mock scrapes, you know, you go up, you're sprinkling the DH3 on the licking branch, and you know, you're kind of mocking it up a little bit there. You have to know that when you're putting it in front of a trail camera, like, especially if you're creating that scrape, that deer's going to come in and investigate it. That may not be his normal travel pattern. He may come by that camera consistently, but just out of range. Mm-hmm. When you see the big community scrapes, like the big one in the swamp that I found, I mean, dude, this thing was 3 times the size of this table. And it was in like that mossy stuff, so it was like, it's one of those areas that just, you know, it holds scent.
Yep.
And that was the one that I put the camera over, and I got the big old buck on camera on the 27th, and I had him on camera multiple times there. All 3 of the bucks that I was chasing were on that camera multiple times during daylight.
Yep.
You know, between the 27th, when I got the first picture of the big buck, all the way up till, you know, when I killed him. But I had, you know, the surrounding cameras were the ones that were really giving me all the intel, because I was finding out where they were coming out in the evening, where they were coming back in the morning. So like the big, you know, the Crab Claw 10, he'd come out a certain direction in the evening. Yep. All of a sudden he'd show up on a camera, you know, coming back in the next morning. And I'm like, he must have done a pretty big loop there, or he, you know, bypassed that camera by walking the edge of this marsh and then circling back. You start, I mean, that's the stuff that I go to sleep to, and I'm assuming you do too. And anybody listening here, like I was thinking earlier when you were talking about recording all that data, there's probably people listening right now thinking like,
yeah,
great, I'm not the only one. Yep. Thank God. See, honey, I'm not the only one that records this, because I mean, that's the level of depth that you have to go into, you know, and I know a lot of guys that will do that. They record all that data, and I wish there was a way to digest all that, or, you know, to kind of like condense it and make a formula out of it to, you know, show other hunters, not just on that specific deer, but maybe take like information that you have on like, say, 5-10 different deer. Yep. And find out where the correlations are, what similarities are there. You know, like, are there different dates where they move during daylight? Are there different moon phases where they move during daylight? Is it during, you know, the seeking phase where they like to move during daylight through this particular area? And it's hard because you'd almost like to do that, but sometimes you're not able to because you're not hunting that same area year after year. It's like this area that last year that where I hunted, like, I may not even hunt there next year. I may go throw cameras in there in September, not get anything that I feel like chasing, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go to a different area.
And the reason we do that is, you know, well, you just explained it like 10 minutes ago. your whole October is all work.
Yes.
Same with me. I try to bust my ass all September and October, so that way when I take my time off in November, my boss isn't looking at me and going, "Oh, he busted his ass for the last 2 months, got me ahead this far. He can take those 3 weeks off."
Yeah,
you know
he's
what I mean?
got it.
So that we're in the same page, but we're also, hey, like if I do hunt, like I hunted this October hard, was last October because I wanted that buck, and I knew I needed to get in there before rifle because I knew exactly what was probably going to happen. Because this past year, everybody knew that deer was going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So I tried to get in there as much as I could. So on the weekends, I might only had one night or one morning, but I still hunted, you know what I mean, because football season with my kid. And so I'd hunt a morning or I'd hunt an evening, but I had to, you know what I mean, because that's the only time I had to do it, you know what I mean. So them cameras and putting those patterns together and stuff, you know what I mean, I'd skip a night just to, you know what I mean, figure this out. Okay, I'm going to hunt tomorrow morning, but I need to figure this out. So you'd catch me on a Saturday night in the bedroom just figuring out, if I go sit here,
I might southwest wind tomorrow.
I'm not going to hunt for another 10 days. So I got to pick the right tree, the right spot, you know what I mean? And, you know what I mean, I was out probably 6 times in October, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
But those cameras, I like to go and put that many cameras in for a certain buck because I only got so much time to hunt them. Like sometimes I only have rifle in Michigan to hunt. You know what I mean? I might only get a couple days for bow season around Halloween or something. You know what I mean? I try to get out during those times. I think everybody would.
Yeah.
So besides my Ohio, you know what I mean? I take time because I don't think it's just Ohio, but it's time to spend with you or my dad. You know what I mean? So I think those cameras help us out because we just don't have the time.
Yeah. Well, I set aside, you know, time to do it. Like we went over there and had the deer camp with Kevin and everyone and, you know, Joe and all them guys. And, you know, it's like that's just one thing like I just don't want to miss. I mean, it's a great group of guys. If I kill a deer, I kill a deer, whatever, you know, but it's just a great group of guys that I like to go and hang out with. They're killers. They're, you know, and they're fun to bounce ideas off of. It's cool to see how do they do it. So
what we're doing on this podcast right now is what we do every night at camp.
Every night, yeah. I mean, when we sit around the campfire, we got like 20, 15, 20 guys there. It's like literally everyone's just kind of like breaking stuff. You're talking to other killers, and that's why it's like, you know, you're bouncing information. It makes you think just a little bit harder, a little bit deeper, and you know, I mean, we've said it forever. It's like, you know, if I didn't have you, my brother, and Jake to bounce ideas off of, I don't think I'd be where I am. Like, I don't think I'd have the success I have because you're expediting that learning curve. You know, I know everyone can go on YouTube and watch stuff, but when you can bounce ideas, like you're telling me a story, I'm going to ask you certain questions that like, ooh, that poses a question. Like, that'd be interesting to know, like what the wind direction that deer made that off the wall 2:00 afternoon push into that Oak Ridge.
Right.
What made him do that? Right. Is there any correlation to any wind direction or temperature or moon phase? That's the information that like I like to just dig into. Right. And, you know, you find some here and there because obviously when you're going through a season, you can say, okay, I got a nice buck in this area. I'm just gonna go in there and hunt that particular spot. Well, you know, if that's his area that he likes to call, you know, that's his sanctuary, you don't really want to go messing around in there. You're going to blow him out of there and blow him off his pattern. So you have to almost kind of like forecast what's going to happen based off of what you know about deer moving through the season. Like, well, he's going to start getting antsy around the 15th or 20th. You might start seeing him on his feet during daylight more. You know, start getting into the last week of October. Okay, they're going to be more in that scraping, maybe even seeking phase. So I may want to be on some of these transition routes leading out of his sanctuary area. Yep. You know what I mean? And then, you know, you get into the first week of November and you're like, well, I tell you what, I think it'd be a good opportunity to go sit somewhere where there's food, like an Oak Ridge or a Clear Cut or something like that. Because I know the does are going to be there and there's probably a good chance he's going to continue monitoring them as the, you know, the daylight starts to fade and they start coming into estrus. They're going to hold tighter to them. You're not going to find that buck in his sanctuary nearly as much.
All right.
At least not until rifle season. And So you almost have to like forecast it and then plan accordingly based off of what you know from previous years and previous deer, and then also what you currently know about that deer. And that's just the mental chess match that is so addicting.
We go through that, and we put all those patterns. We get a strategy, and we get all that, and we're say I'm at home and I'm literally talking to myself, getting all this.
Yeah.
Okay, if I go out, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. But I can call Jake up or go over to Jake's house or come here and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. What do you think? I mean, that's what the buck that I shot this year. Yeah. So the buck I was chasing got shot.
Yeah.
So I literally abandoned that spot and I went back to another spot, but I wasn't getting the movement that I wanted, so I needed to change stuff up. And we're talking the second day of rifle season. I'm sitting at camp, and I told Jake, I said, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this, changing it up. I need to cut these deer off, because I'm gonna say it now. I'm against the whole nocturnal thing. I'm not with that. I don't believe in that. I think you just need to change up your patterns. You need to cut them off. You got to get over here.
You can't afford to believe in it either.
No.
I mean, you only got a select amount of days to hunt. Right. You got to hunt.
And so I broke down a thing with Jake, and Jake literally opened my eyes. He's like, hey, what happens if you do this, this, and this?
Yeah.
Well, shit, I don't know. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're talking, we had a southeast wind, I think, or a south wind. On the second day, it was either south or southeast.
It was a south wind, yeah, and southeast, I think.
Jake's like, well, you can just come in from this way. You don't have to come in from this way. I said, well, I could do that too. I'll just come in there, and brand new spot. I've never been. He has. I haven't. I've been around that certain area. I've never been in that spot I shot my buck this past year in Michigan. Yeah. I physically have never walked in there.
Yeah.
When I walked in there that day to set up, that was the first time I ever been in there, ever scouted, ever.
I had been in that swamp, I'm assuming where that deer came from, but this was like 15, maybe 15 years ago. Yeah, I remember going back in there.
I've been so
it's pretty sweet.
It's a long ways in there. So
yes.
I've came in from all different directions. I just never physically made it that far yet.
Yeah.
And I said at this time, I said, well, I'm going to go, and if I pass 3 cars, I'm going to go to this spot. If I don't pass any cars, I'm going to that spot me and Jake were just talking about and broke down on Onyx. And you know what I mean? So it's an area that I had all my cameras in. Mm-hmm. It's just I'd never made it that far to put any cameras. So I don't know what was there. I was just going off the data on the outside. Mm-hmm. So I have cameras all the way around that spot I shot that deer. I just needed to figure out a good spot to go in, and tell the truth, that south or southeast wind was a perfect. Like that's a southeast spot for me from here on out.
Yeah.
So it took me forever to get back in there, and it was a pain in the ass the way I entered it, because I needed to enter it that way. But that was the first time setting up. I hit the sign like I did in Ohio. Like, okay, I can't pass the sign. I got to get up in the tree.
Yeah.
Got up in the tree at 1 o'clock. Ended up shooting that buck at 5.
Yeah.
A buck that I had on camera.
Just in a different spot.
Just in a different spot.
Yes.
Daylight. Don't get me wrong, I had daylight pictures, but we're talking, I don't know, half a mile maybe. I had pictures of this buck days before. Yep. You know what I mean, 3.5-year-old buck. But it was a nice, tall, tight it was a nice buck.
Yep.
And ended up killing him. And I thought he was a touch bigger than when I first shot him. In the film, he looks huge. You know what I mean? So when I got down, I was like, oh, I know exactly what buck this is.
Yep.
I'm like,
it's like a pig, them deer in there. I don't know why they're short legs.
Yeah, their bodies are short.
It's weird. I don't get. And a lot of the bucks out in that area too have had that. Like I've killed a couple of them where I'm like I know for a fact this is a 3-year-old. Why is it this small?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like big swollen neck. You know the teeth. You get the teeth aged and stuff, and it's just I don't know if it's genetics.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That I'm sure there's something there. I'm sure it's a culmination of multiple things. But,
but I ended up. You have to go back and watch our footage when it comes out. But I ended up grunting, and minute 2 minutes pass after grunting, he came around. I'd say a corner, come around swamp and coming right at me right after I grunted. And I heard a grunt, so I grunted, blind grunted. And I try not to normally do that. And if I do, I try to put a couple doe bleats in there a little bit if I do any kind of blind grunting.
Yeah.
But I said, second day, first time in there, I haven't seen anything for like 3 hours. And so I grunted, and I heard a splash. So I grunted again, and right after was that a grunt? I think it was. I'll grunt one more time. So I grunted one big one, put it in my shirt like this, I look up, and he's just coming right down the edge of the river. I'm like, holy shit.
Come get some.
And when he's walking towards me with his just getting it, I thought he was the big one that I was in there for.
Yeah.
So I had the big one that got shot, and then I had one more, a 6.5. Well, I shouldn't say 6.5 to 7.5 year old that I had the same year and the same spot of my big one that I shot. Mm-hmm. I had them at the same time. I just didn't have as many because I think that big one was
keeping them out of there.
You know what I mean? Jake had them a couple miles away on camera. So I think he took over that spot, and that was the buck I went in there for, but I ended up, that's the buck I thought I shot.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's fourth buck I've grunted in with that grunt call.
Yeah, dude, that grunt call is awesome. Yeah. What is it? What is it called?
The
brawler?
The brawler.
The brawler.
Yeah.
Dude, no affiliation, but that is the best sounding grunt call I have ever heard in my entire life. 100%. Yeah. Yep. That was a nice buck that you killed. Yeah, that was great footage too, by the way. I watched all that. That was great footage.
So Jake and I talked about it that day, about where am I going. I said, well, I might go up the river just above where my hunting spot is. I said, I always wanted to hunt there, and I could see a long ways. I was going to take his bee sticks and get up high. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, if I got service, I'll let you know where I go. Okay. Well, I didn't have service, and I went up in there, got back in there, and no service.
Yeah.
And ended up shooting that buck and got up on the ridge and finally got trying to get a hold of Jake. No answer. I got a hold of you. You said, yeah, I'll start heading that way. I said, okay. And then Jake finally called me. And the first thing he answers the phone because I called him at like 5, like right after. I literally got down, climbed up because the buck was on the ground and got service. And it was a little after 5. The first thing he answers, he's like, where you at? I said, back where we were talking about. You could hear it in his voice. Are you serious? I said, yeah. He's like, you got one down? I said, yeah. He's like, fuck. Sorry for the language, but he's gonna beep it out. He's like, you could hear it in his voice. He's like, damn it. I should have never told him about it.
Should have never told you to go.
He's like, I said, we talked about it. We had a strategy. We put the plan together, and I said, nah, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna do it one time, at least one time. I'm gonna get in there. Yeah. That way, I could say I've been in there, and if I need to put cameras, I'm happy I did. Now I can know what to do, and because I've went in there a couple times after season in January there, and he's like, okay, well, I'll start heading that way. I said, well, I'm gonna hike out. And he said he had a different path in, easier route. So I ended up hiking out. We ended up hiking back in and getting that deer, and it wasn't like an easy walk either.
No, it wasn't. Remember we found that guy's pad that he was sitting on and his shooting sticks, and then we got back and like we thought it was the guys that were camped right there, and they're like, no, that's not ours. I'm like, someone left their stuff back there. So
I ended up going back. Days after, like a week later, I think, and ended up going back there in muzzleloader. That's what it was. I went back there in muzzleloader, and that stuff was all gone.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting that big buck on camera, the one I went in there for.
So he's still alive.
So he's still alive.
So hope he makes it through the winter.
Yeah. So I had him on Thanksgiving. I went back there and chased them.
We did just lose a lot of snow though, so and it's good we did. We're halfway through February here. It was getting pretty bad, but we did just lose a lot of snow, so I think that's gonna help. But that was
But I had him on camera in right after Christmas, and he still had his horn. Still had horns going, and he was just walking through. Yep, daylight picture. Just like, hey, could have easily bow hunted it if I wanted to. I just never went out there. Well, we had a lot of snow.
A lot of snow. I don't necessarily throughout. I mean, it was great for elk season because we could get around the woods quietly. I mean, we were sneaking up to, within bow range of some of these elk.
Right.
It was bad though. Like I knew as soon as we started getting dumped on, I just went to work snow plowing, and so hunting pretty much went out the window outside of elk hunting.
Jake had a good year. His year.
Jake doubled up.
Both of your guys' year was early.
Yeah, I mean, I was done by day 3. I mean, I had a little bit of hunting to do with Brooke and stuff, but it started getting really cold, and then the snow started piling in. It was just like I could tell she was like, I don't really want to go out tonight.
The snow is what got me. Both my spots. We had a break in the snow where we had a little bit of melt, and believe it or not, I went in muzzleloader.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of muzzleloader, went in with my beast standard stick, put them up, and I was like, and it started raining, like downpouring. I said, I'm getting out of here. I'll come back in the morning. Yeah. Well, that rain turned into snow, and we got like piled, and I couldn't get back in there because it was just wet, nasty, and so I was like, I'll just get back in there. And a week went on, another week, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get back there and get my beast stand down.
Go get that down.
And finally got a break there where I can get back there with my truck, and I huffed it in that snow, and I never crossed one deer track all the way to the tree stand. I'm like, yeah, they don't like the snow back here.
Yeah.
I went 2.5 miles back there to get my stand. I hiked back out, and I took a different route to see if I crossed another deer track. Not one deer track.
They're all piled in the swamps already. Yeah.
But
well, dude, we're around 2 hours here, so I think we could about wrap her up. I think we dove into enough deer hunting here for a little while. I do want to get. I want to do kind of like a spring scouting workshop. There's a couple other things that I want to do. I may even do something live. So if you guys out there want to do like a Wednesday night or something where, we jump on live and you guys can. Throw some questions at us. Maybe tell us, how your year went, and maybe ask some questions and stuff. That'd be pretty cool to kind of interact with a lot of you followers out there.
Get old Jake back in the house here, have him in front of the camera a couple times.
Cat season's about wrapped up, so we'll see if,
Or Jake got Uncle Lou Bobcat
got
the other
Uncle
day.
Lou Bobcat. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I know when he came up, it was a couple years ago when he was out at the deer camp with all of us.
Yep.
He had mentioned that he was interested in coming up and cat hunting. So it was really cool. I mean, last year was a terrible cat season because he barely had any snow.
Yep.
So this year was like a cat hunter's dream until it got too deep. And, then it melted a little bit, and then it kind of crusted up, and that kind of makes it hard for the dogs to get through there. Cuts them up pretty good. And, but they got it done.
Yep.
And Jake is. I don't even know how many he's
I
up
have
to
not talked to him
year.
about how many he got this year, but he said every time I talk to him, he's like, I'm busy. Elvin put that post on Facebook, and I've been swamped. Since.
I had dozens of people messaging in, hey, I want information on cow hunting. I'm like, well, you got to have the tag before. It's like October 26th every year. You have to have your cat tag by then, and if you don't, you just can't go hunting. So
last year it was. They change it every year.
They change it every year. They just decide, you got to have it by this time now. Yeah. And it just completely throws people off.
Wasn't that a week ago? Oh, yeah, you're too late.
I don't understand why they do that. It doesn't make any sense.
That's the only thing. What is that, the only season that changes all the time? It's changed in the last couple times in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they change so much stuff. So, I mean, they'll change things, and not even after they've already put the regulation
I forgot to get mine.
Book out. I get mine every year, but it was a couple years ago. I mean, just real quick, I was up lake trout fishing, and we go out, and I had my cousin John with me and his wife, and we went out, and we got 3 lake trout apiece, so we had 9 lake trout. Go back to the launch, and we're cleaning everything up, and all of a sudden, one conservation officer comes in. He wasn't on duty, he was out there fishing too, but because I know him, he's like, how many you got right there? I was like, oh, we got our limit, 3 apiece. He's like, it's 2, right? And I'm like, no. I was like, I can show you right in the book where it says, 3 apiece. And he's like, no. He's like, they changed that regulation after the book came out. There's I don't know if it was the Great Lakes Council or whatever, but they changed it. And it was in like, it was like a month or 2 after they had already put the regulations book out. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I never heard anything until that exact day. And he's like, we're going to see this a lot. I'm just telling people right now. And I was like, okay.
Gotcha.
Because you get the wrong one. They'll
well, they do that all the time. They put the book out
and
something changes and they don't change it. They might even change. Sometimes they don't even change it online right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it delayed multiple times.
So
because you hear about it, people are like, "Hey, did you hear you got to do this now?" And you're like, "Nuh-uh." You look in the book and it still doesn't say it, and then you're like, you look online and then it does say it, and you're like,
"Yeah,
all right." So I don't know, gets a little confusing.
We got a few things in mind on the next couple podcasts and things coming up.
So actually, tomorrow night we're going to be interviewing a gentleman from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan who runs hounds, deer hunts, lives up there. He's got a lot of wolf stories for us. Let's just put it that way. And he, obviously we're going to kind of go through and we're going to talk to him about how he feels about it. He knows how we feel about it. Not a lot of people are speaking up about it, unfortunately, especially in this space. And, I think that's pretty bad. I think the greatest threat to deer hunting right now, to hunting in general, are the wolves that are out of control. I think I want to protect our public lands and all that, and we'll go into this a little bit more too in that episode. And actually, Kevin's got a good one coming out tomorrow.
Right on.
Yeah, so I want to listen to the Deer Hunter podcast, but this one will come out after anyways. So if you haven't heard that one,
go back and
by the time you hear this, please go back to the Deer Hunter podcast and listen to that. So I know Kevin and Joe, they hit on that quite a bit. Same thing that we've been pretty much talking about where, everyone's worried about the public lands, but nobody's talking about the wolves that are out there eating all the game.
Right.
And unchecked, and they're protected. And nobody's really calling out the people that claim to be hunters and conservationists that are protecting these wolves, or at least arguing for the protection of these wolves. And there, some people are going to have to get called out, and I have no issue doing that. I'm beyond worried about offending people at this point. If you are not smart enough to understand that an unchecked wolf population is literally a death sentence for any game animal you have, huntable game population, I don't know what else to tell you. And I want to be very respectful, but I'm beyond being worried about offending people, because these wolves need to be shot. They need to be shot. They need to be trapped. They need a season on them. They need to, get a couple scientists in there that can say, hey, we can sustain a wolf. We can sustain a good deer population at this level. And I want hunters to be able to look at that scientific data to see if it's bullshit or not.
All right.
Because, I understand that science is important, and I'm never going to criticize science. But science isn't always done in the best interest of science or conservation or sustainability. Sometimes science is done to get information gathered together to show proof or correlation, to pass certain laws that hunters may not be in favor of, or maybe that don't result in the best sustainable conservation efforts for certain animals. And I'm worried about that. I really, really think that hunters need to have more of an input.
Yeah.
We need hunters on the NRC board. We need hunters and real outdoorsmen, on that board, making good, sound decisions based off of what us collectively as hunters and anglers and outdoor enthusiasts are seeing. Because you can go to a DNR meeting and they will tell you that there is a perfectly fine population of deer in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
But when you talk to the hunter that's out there every day.
Yeah, when you talk to the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of hunters that go hunting to the UP every day, they would literally laugh you out of a room.
Yep.
Because we know it's not true. Well, science shows that, with, wolves in the ecosystem and deer and moose and all that stuff, we can only have 1.5 deer per 10 square miles. No.
But nature and wildlife is going to be what it's going to be every year. You know what I mean? They're going to be what it is, but we're trying to, wolves are going to be there. We just need to take some of them out.
Yes.
Is where we're getting at. We're not saying you got to take them all out.
Yeah, I'm not calling for the extinction of wolves.
You're just saying we need to, it's no different in what they're doing to the deer. You're talking about the population is at where it needs to be. Well, okay, we could do that. The wolves don't have to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? We could slow the population down of the wolves, too. Yeah. That's a thing. You know what I mean? You could put a couple tags out. Okay, there's 30 wolves. Let's only take 5 out. At least we're trying. We're doing something. Yeah. You know what I mean? We're not saying we need to take them all out.
Right.
We're saying we need to slow the population down.
They need to be kept in check.
Other populations can get built up.
Yeah.
Not the other way. You know what I mean? If you don't slow something down, they're just going to keep building up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They breed, they eat, they kill, and they continue.
Eventually, something else is going to go. The deer is going to slow down. The wolves are going to start going to something else.
Livestock.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And we're not talking
smaller mammals.
We're not getting an attitude and stuff because they're killing our hunting dogs. Yeah, we're putting our dogs out there chasing the bear and all that stuff. It's nothing to do with that. It's no different if them dogs are out in the woods or if I take my kids out hiking. Mm. We're still in the same damn woods. Yeah. You know what I mean? As those dogs, they're making a little bit of noise in the woods chasing a bear that we paid our money to for a tag to kill that bear.
And then some.
So that the tags keep going up, or it takes you 11 years now to get a bear tag.
Yeah.
So we're still putting our time in for that. So I don't think that's an argument. When people bring up on Facebook about, your dogs are getting this, you're the one that's putting your dogs in harm's way. No,
the harm shouldn't be there.
No, exactly. That's where I'm getting at. Like that shouldn't be there. I shouldn't have to worry about down here where we don't have wolves. We don't have dogs. We do, but I'm saying the dogs don't get eaten because the population's at a fair amount right now.
Yes.
So our dogs don't get torn up and eaten or anything like that. Yeah, I can go in by myself and retrieve my dog. When I go up to the UP with Jake or anybody, I'm not going in there by myself to go fucking retrieve my dog.
Right.
I'm going to take somebody or another dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's where we're getting at. You know what I mean? Eventually, they're going to slowly move to other things, not just deer, not just rabbits, not just this. It's just like anything else. They just keep moving.
Yeah.
Or they're going to populate down further. They're going to start coming down in our area.
Which they are.
You know what I mean? Well, yeah, they're already here. But the guys that drive me crazy, I try not to, because I don't say the right words. I don't write the right words on Facebook and stuff, so I stay out of it. I let somebody like you that knows a little bit more wording to word it right. I just come off as an asshole. So
I do too, though, and I try not to.
Right. Well,
I really don't. Like
they feed into it. Like they just keep repeating themselves. And
yeah, and I try not to. I understand different people have different opinions.
Yeah.
But the science experiment is over. We know that we cannot have an unchecked wolf population in Michigan.
Zero.
Not when you're trying to sustain a future for hunting.
Yep.
You can't. We know this. The joke is over. The science project is over. Let's start shooting, boys.
Yes.
It's common sense. And you look at the same things out west. I've hunted western Montana. I've hunted the panhandle of Idaho. I've been to Wyoming. I mean, those areas like where there are wolves, there is a significant reduction in the amount of game. It's not even a question anymore. Right. It's not even a question. It's just like wherever you have an unchecked population of wolves, there's going to be a lot less game animals.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is I think it's being done on purpose. I literally think this is an attack on hunting. And like I said, I've gone back and forth with some with some pretty big voices in this space.
Yep.
And like I said, I have zero issue. I am beyond being worried about offending anyone at this point. I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm not trying to take food off anyone's table. But if you are spreading an ideology, or at least you're not addressing the biggest frickin' issue that we're dealing with in the United States or North America in general right now,
Yep.
I can't follow you because you're not pointing out what is really destroying hunting. I can't follow with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go worry about a minor issue when my house is on fire. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't turn the dryer off. House is on fire, but I got to go turn the dryer. Just so stupid. Like, we're not directing our main focus to the highest threat right now. And I'll put it real simple, the more game animals you have, okay, the more opportunities for hunting there are. The more opportunities we have for hunting, the more participation we have. We know this.
Yeah.
This is not a science debate. We know that that's a fact. If you have less game animals in an area, people are less likely to go hunting. You also can't sell tags for animals that don't exist, although somehow the state of Michigan thinks you can. Like the unlimited deer tags. Like, get the F out of here. There's no reason you should be doing that north of frickin' Grayling. There's no reason there should be unlimited. I mean, in some areas, yes. On private property, there's a couple, a lot of areas of private property where there's a lot of does. Good. Give them block permits. Why the hell are you handing out unlimited doe tags for the entire state of Michigan? People aren't using them downstate where they need to be used. Right. They're using them up here. It doesn't make sense. No. Like, the way that the state is managed is so out of whack. It's almost, it appears intentional. You can't make this shit up.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I'll leave it right there because, like I said, we're going to go into it a little bit more on the next episode.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, and I could go on for days about that, but like I said, I'm extremely vocal about it. I'm going to continue being vocal about it. I don't mean to offend anyone. I really don't. I don't want to take food off anyone's table, but I just want the truth to be spoken because we're at a point right now where authenticity and truth is very, very important. Right. And I think people are becoming more privy to seeing authenticity rather than, the fakeness. We just went through an election process where we obviously it was on the losing side. They couldn't even do a freaking 5-minute interview without it being edited down to 30 seconds of still word salad.
Right.
And then you had another side just literally going everywhere and blurting everything out and telling you exactly what they're going to do. And it's like people know now that authenticity is rare, for one, especially in the political sphere or anytime you're getting into a political topic. You know what? If you have an opposing view, come talk about it. Right. Get on podcasts. Get on social media and actually debate with people. Like, this needs to happen. If you, at this point, literally cannot explain your belief, you must not believe it very much. And I've had a bunch of them. I have frickin' text messages of people like, I in the nicest way, I'm offering, hey, you want to come on the podcast? You want to talk? You want to do a live stream? Let's, you can have a moderator of your choice. They don't want to do it, but they will sit in the comments on that original thread and talk shit about you because most of the time I'm going into enemy territory. Yeah. And then I'm starting to say stuff. It's not like people are coming onto my post and then I'm getting into a massive debate with them. I'm going on to someone else's post that doesn't agree with me, and I'm just like, hey, I think that there's some contradicting facts here. I think that, you may want to rethink this. You know what I mean? And then you'll see some of them are just like, well, maybe there is. I don't know, but I just haven't seen that science or those facts yet. Okay, no problem. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you. And then you get other ones that just go off the wall on you. And you're like, well, hey, let's sit down and debate a bit. Let's have a conversation about it. Nope. They don't even respond to you.
Right.
But they'll keep talking shit. So.
But you'll have another podcast tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and Jake are going to do that. And this one will get released. I definitely want to get some deer hunting content out there because, that's where we're at. And I don't want to continue this. I don't want this channel to be about, politics or drama. I want it to be about deer hunting. I'm a deer hunter. You're a deer hunter. We love deer hunting and, everything else wild. And I want it to be about that. But I'm going to stand my ground on a lot of these issues. And I'm not worried about offending anyone anymore. And the truth needs to be told.
And for our viewers and listeners that have been with us from the beginning, we appreciate it. And thank you for that. And Elvin's taking this podcast. We're going to try to keep up on it. And life gets ahead of us sometimes. So we're hoping to stay on top of this a little bit more. So. Yeah,
definitely want to. I mean, there's a lot of people. We get a lot of people asking about it. It's just like, you have a life. I have a life. And it can be tough, but I appreciate everyone that's been there for us, and I definitely want to make more of a conscientious effort to get these out and to get information and content out there that you want. So if you have any questions or anything, or maybe some ideas, some topics to talk about, I mean, I'm willing to learn about some other stuff, or maybe talk to some people where I don't quite have that field of expertise. I could be more than happy to. So yeah. But anyways. Yeah, call it a night. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Stay wild.
Appreciate it.